I hope every cheating bastard gets tortured to death and rots in hell. The curse, sharp and raw, jolted Leo from his daze. He snapped his head toward the source. A girl in his class was sobbing, a small circle of classmates murmuring useless comforts around her. Leo let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. For a second, he thought they were talking about him. Turns out, her boyfriend had a wandering eye, the kind that roamed to anything with a pulse. The whole class was united in their outrage. Strange, he thought. They're cursing someone else, so why's my heart hammering against my ribs? What do I have to feel guilty about? Leo sank back into his thoughts, but the brief moment of attention hadn't gone unnoticed. Hey, look, Leo's watching, one of the girls whispered, and a ripple of excitement went through their little group. The new guy didn't say much, mostly just stared out the window, lost in thought. But when you looked like him, you didn't have to say much to get noticed. The girl sitting next to him, Chloe, saw her opening. Leo, you've got to weigh in on this. Tell us what you think. He glanced at the circle of expectant faces, all fixed on him. A tired smile touched his lips. He just wanted to get back to his own spiraling thoughts, but a quick, agreeable answer was the fastest way out. Yeah, you're right, he said, his voice smooth. They all deserve what's coming to them. Chloe's cheeks flushed as she stared at his faint smile. The other girls, satisfied, broke into a flurry of whispers and giggles. He has such a nice smile. Honestly, if it was someone as hot as Leo, maybe getting your heart broken wouldn't be so bad. From the other side of the room, the guys just scoffed. TCH. Women. The classroom noise grated on Leo's nerves. He shifted, propping his chin on his hand and turning his gaze back out the window. Rows of Gothic revival buildings clawed at the sky, their spires like skeletal fingers. High above, a colossal airship pierced the clouds, its hull shimmering with a mysterious blue halo. On the cobblestone streets below, gentlemen in top hats and long coats strolled with walking canes, an echo of a bygone era. This wasn't his time. It wasn't any time that should have existed, but it was all painfully familiar. Anomaly Containment Sanctuary Game version 2. 0 updating. Loading data pack. Please wait, hat's right. Leo had just been ice-guyed, dropped right into a dating sim he used to play. The reason he'd been spacing out was the sheer, dumbfounding shock of it all. Most people who get dropped into another world start with a treasure chest of cheat codes and legendary weapons. He got dropped into a lecture on Magitech industrial processes, a class that might as well have been taught in ancient Sumerian for all the sense it made. Anomaly Containment Sanctuary was a dark fantasy dating sim set in a world where steam technology and magic coexisted. On the surface, human society was a thriving, prosperous utopia, but beneath the polished veneer, in the dark corners no one looked, strange and terrifying things were stirring. Unspeakable elder gods were waking from their slumber. The player character was, publicly, a student at the prestigious Blackwood Academy. Secretly, he was the director of the Sanctuary, a clandestine organization dedicated to studying and containing supernatural entities that threatened humanity. But since this was a dating sim, the entities were almost exclusively monster girls. Girls with horns, wings, white hair, red eyes. Even one with tentacles. The main gameplay loop was to collect these problem girls, uncover the fog-shrouded truths of the world with your companions, and ultimately, save it. The reason that girl's curse, cheating bastard and rots in hell, had hit him so hard was simple. Flirting with one girl, getting what he wanted, then moving on to the next. Wasn't that exactly what he'd done? The game's mechanics required you to contain, essentially to fully romance, each chapter's main heroine to get resources and unlock the next part of the story. But Leo was a pure gamer. He loved the dark, twisted aesthetic of the world so much that he'd practically forgotten it was a dating sim. He played it like a detective RPG, a mystery-solving adventure. Girls getting in the way of his investigation? Annoying. He was a paranormal investigator walking in the shadows, a man destined to save the world. The heroines were just tools, a means to an end to get the rewards and beat the game. There was, however, a consequence to this playstyle. The game had an incredibly high degree of freedom, and a character's affinity score directly impacted the plot. If you wooed a girl and then ghosted her, her affinity would drop. If it dropped low enough, she might turn on you, knife in hand, becoming an enemy. Leo couldn't have that, so he found a loophole and exploit. He ignored his combat stats in the early game. It was an investigation-heavy game anyway, and poured every single point he earned into one stat, charisma. With his charisma maxed out, Leo became a walking aphrodisiac. A heroine's affinity dropping? No problem. He'd just invite her out on a private date, walk around town, charm her a little, and boom, affinity maxed out again. Riding that cheap trick, he'd almost finished the entire game. But last night, after an all-night gaming session, he'd passed out at his desk. When he woke up, he was here, in the game. The school bell rang, signaling the end of the day. The classroom erupted into noise. Outside, a steam-powered bus hissed to a stop across the street, its horn bellowing. Everything felt real. This was no dream. Leo caught his reflection in the window pane and gave a bitter smile. He just checked his game interface. All the girls he'd previously contained, the heroines, had left his party. This was not good news. When the game becomes reality, the characters become real, too. Thinking back on how he'd treated them, a cold dread washed over him. The game's protagonist was, to put it mildly, kind of scumbag. They're not going to come after me with an axe, are they? He wondered. Am I going to end up on the news? Another one of those guys killed by a jealous lover? His reflection stared back at him. A young man in a crisp white shirt, propping his chin on his hand, long fingers toying with a fountain pen. His thoughtful expression gave him a kind of broody, artistic air. He was handsome, with an indefinable, mysterious quality that had captured the attention of every girl in class from the moment he'd arrived. In the game, to enhance player immersion, the director had no specific appearance. Ironically, Leo's real face fit the part perfectly. His thoughts circled back to the danger. Even if they did come for him, he had one ace up his sleeve. His stats had carried over. His charisma was still maxed out. If I could win them over once with maxed out charisma, what's stopping me from doing it again? His anxiety began to fade, replaced by a flicker of confidence. A self-assured smile spread across his face, causing Chloe, who had been stealing glances at him, to blush even harder. Class was dismissed. Just as Leo was about to pack his bag, a voice called from the doorway. "Hey, Leo, your girlfriend's here." "Girlfriend?" Leo thought, confused. What girlfriend? He looked toward the door, along with every other student still lingering in the room. A collective gasp, a held breath, then silence. Standing in the doorway was a painfully beautiful, timid-looking girl with eyes the color of a summer sky and long, pale gold hair. The soft afternoon light streamed in behind her, making her hair glow and her skin seem almost translucent. She looked like a fairy who had stumbled into the mortal world, too ethereal to be human. "Excuse me," she began, her voice soft as a whisper. Is my brother here?" Leo started, a flicker of unfamiliarity passing through him. Then it hit him. "Helena." The girl's blue eyes widened with pure, unadulterated joy. "Leo, I finally found you." She gathered the hem of her simple white dress and practically ran to him. Leo watched her approach. Helena, the first anomaly he'd ever contained. A child he'd found in the slums. He'd been so focused on the game's plot that he'd almost forgotten she was one of the main heroines. As she threw her arms around him, her head barely reaching his chest, a startling realization hit him. When he first found Helena, she was 13. Now she was a young woman. So, I haven't just been dropped into the game. I've been dropped into its future. It seemed at least a few years had passed. Helen Affinity, 100 description, a girl who is extremely fond of you. Though she looked human, Helena was technically an anomaly, a type of creature considered extremely dangerous to mankind. In the game, she'd always been stable, quiet, almost a background character. Leo had worried that in his absence, the girls might have changed, become unstable, dangerous. But seeing her max affinity, he breathed a sigh of relief. "Helena, hey, I know you missed me, but you're going to choke me." She was clinging to him so tightly, her whole body trembling, as if she was afraid he'd vanish into thin air. "Leo." Helena finally loosened her grip, suddenly aware of all the eyes on them. She looked down, her voice shy. "Let's go home, Leo." "Yeah, okay." Leo smiled and ruffled her soft hair. "I have a lot I want to ask you anyway. Like what year it was, what had happened while he was gone, and where everyone else was." "Leo, is this adorable little girl you're?" one of the female students asked, her eyes full of curiosity. Leo took Helena's hand. "She's my sister," he explained with a smile. "We haven't seen each other in a few years." "Oh, just his sister." A wave of relief washed over the girls in the room. They immediately started trying to chat with Helena, which only made the shy girl shrink even more. She clutched Leo's arm, her head bowed, not saying a word. Just then, a male student poked his head in from the hallway. "Leo, Professor wants to see you. In her office after class." "Oh." Leo felt Helena's grip tighten. She was clearly uncomfortable with all the strangers. Seeing her cornered by his well-meaning classmates, looking so pitiful and scared, reminded him of going through the whole Thanksgiving dinner interrogation by every aunt and uncle. He decided to rescue her. "We can talk tomorrow. he said, waving goodbye to the disappointed girls. He took Helena's hand and led her out of the classroom, their cheerful chatter echoing behind them. But in a place Leo couldn't see, Helena's expression shifted. The timid shyness vanished. She glanced back over her shoulder, her gaze sweeping over the girls he'd just been talking to. Her eyes were cold, dark, and twisted. On the way home, Helena held Leo's hand in a death grip, but she remained silent, seemingly lost in thought. "What's wrong? What are you thinking about?" Leo asked gently. Helena looked up at him, her expression hesitant. "Leo, can you not go to school anymore?" Her voice was a small plea. "I want you to stay home with me." Leo chuckled. "Didn't I always stay home with you before?" She shook her head, a sad smile gracing her lips. "You're too popular at school. I'm worried." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Worried someone will take you away from me." "They won't," Leo said, ruffling her hair again. "I'll always be your brother." But this time, she pulled away from his touch, her voice growing lower, more insistent. "It's not like that. It's not like that. It's not like that." She kept repeating the phrase, a strange, sharp edge to her tone. Leo watched her, a knot of concern tightening in his stomach. He'd never seen her react this way. The pressure on his hand was becoming immense, as if she were trying to crush the bones. A sliver of fear pricked at him. "Helena wants," she began, her voice trailing off. "Wants? Wants what?" Leo asked, confused. She kept her head bowed, hiding her face in shadow. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. A strange feeling crept over Leo. His sister. She felt different. Wrong. With her still silent, Leo turned his gaze to the street. It was a fascinating blend of old and new, steam and sorcery. Miraculous and strange things were everywhere. Anomaly Containment Sanctuary had been a niche game, so obscure he often felt like he was the only one playing it. But the art style was incredible, right up his alley, and he'd poured countless hours into it. So, when he first realized he was in the game world, he'd been genuinely excited. In his old life, he was alone, bored. Here, he was a mysterious figure with a secret identity, a house, and a roster of beautiful companions. It was the ultimate power fantasy. He couldn't wait to start his adventure. His normal student cover at Blackwood was a necessary disguise, which is why he hadn't given Helena a straight answer about quitting. He looked back at her, still silent, head down. Just as he was about to try and comfort her again, she snapped her head up. Her face was transformed, wreathed in a gentle, angelic smile. "I'm sorry, Leo. I wasn't thinking about what you want. Let's hurry home." In the game story, Helena had always been the most gentle and considerate one. Seeing that familiar smile, Leo felt a wave of relief wash over him. The uneasy feeling from before began to fade. "It's okay. I understand." How could sweet, obedient Helena ever have a dark thought in her head? He took her hand again, and the atmosphere between them returned to its familiar warmth. They chatted and laughed about the last 4 years as they wound through the streets, finally arriving at their large house on the quiet outskirts of the city. It was a 2-story Victorian, a legacy from his late father that had become the de facto base for the sanctuary. It was less of a containment facility and more of a boarding house for the anomalies he'd helped, a big, chaotic family living under one roof. So when he opened the door to a cold, silent, and empty house, he was confused. "Huh, where's everyone?" "They?" Behind him, Leo heard a heavy click. Helena had deadbolted the door. A sudden, bone-deep chill filled the air, a cold that seemed to emanate from the very moment he'd uttered the word "they." Leo turned around slowly. The smile on his face froze, then vanished. Helena's gentle expression was gone. Her face was a dark, stormy mask, her eyes fixed on him with an indescribable, eerie intensity. "Them?" she hissed, the word dripping with venom. "Them!" Her face contorted, twisting from a blank slate into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. "4 years. I looked for you for 4 whole years. I was the only one who never stopped looking. They all disappeared, and you're still thinking about them? Isn't having me enough?" Leo's mouth fell open. Her reaction was so violent, so sudden, he was completely unprepared. He instinctively glanced at the door and saw that she'd added a heavy chain lock he'd never seen before. While he wasn't paying attention, she'd sealed them in. "Helena," he stammered. "What's wrong with you?" Seeing her, a complete stranger from the girl he knew just moments ago, Leo took an involuntary step back. She was fine just now. Was it all an act? Helena saw his retreat, and a grotesque smile stretched her angelic features. "Why are you backing away, Leo? Are you afraid of me?" Her laugh was a high, chilling sound. "Ha ha, I knew it. I knew it. You never saw me as your sister. You've always seen me as a monster." "Wait, Helena!" Leo saw she was spiraling and tried desperately to explain. It's not like that. I would never think that. But it was too late. As her smile twisted further, a powerful force slammed into Leo's mind. His body seized up, paralyzed by a primal fear. His vision warped, the room bending and stretching around him. Helena's own form seemed to distort, becoming something grotesque, something his mind refused to process. The pure, gentle girl was transforming into something he couldn't bear to look at. You are under intense psychic assault. Performing sanity check. Sanity check. Failed sanity-5. Helena, stop it. Leo gritted out. You're not yourself. You're projecting a psychic assault. No, Leo, she cooed, stalking toward him. I know exactly what I'm doing. From somewhere, she produced a sharp, gleaming knife. Her smile grew more manic as she advanced. Helena, we'll never let you leave again. What are you doing? Leo's body trembled, the mental contamination making it almost impossible to speak. The cold, sharp steel of the blade pressed against his skin. A frigid touch that promised death. You're not being a good boy, Leo, Helena whispered, her tone a chilling mix of demonic glee and childish petulance. The tip of the knife danced across his neck, then trailed down to his chest. So, Helena has to do this. Only this way. Can you be with me forever? She watched his terrified expression, her laughter echoing in the silent house. It's all your fault for being so charming, so well-liked. If you'd just agreed to my request earlier, this wouldn't have to happen. But this is the only way now. Leo felt a sharp, piercing pain in his chest as the tip of the knife broke his skin. The agony jolted him with a horrifying realization. She was serious. She was actually going to kill him. Does it hurt, Leo? She asked, her free hand gently caressing his cheek as if to soothe him. Don't worry. It'll be over soon. Very soon. And don't be scared. I'll be with you. No one will ever be able to take you away from me again. We'll be together forever, very soon. The agony of the blade, sinking deeper into his chest, was a clarifying fire. It burned away the psychic fog. In that split second of lucidity, he was free from her mental prison. He summoned every ounce of strength he had and shoved her hard. Helena stumbled back, the knife flying from her hand and clattering to the floor. His mind clear, Leo's first instinct was to use his containment authority. Any anomaly he'd contained could be controlled, forced to join his team. But in the next second, Helena's character panel updated in his vision. The information on it sent a chill colder than any blade straight to his heart. Helena, uncontained/escaped, race, hybrid anomaly, human 95%, Shoggoth 5%, affinity, 100 corruption level, 75 threat level, 4-star, high danger. Description, a twisted being, madly in love with you. It must have been because of the 4 years he was gone. The system now listed her as uncontained. In Anomaly Containment Sanctuary, a target could only be successfully contained if their affinity was above 50 and their corruption level was below 50. Having just arrived, with no contained anomalies, Leo was a general without an army. He had no skills, no way to fight back. He was screwed. Helena, who had nearly fallen, righted herself. She stared at him, that twisted smile still plastered on her face. So, you're still choosing to fight back, Leo? I guess my choice was the right one after all. A beautiful person like you was never meant to be mine in the first place. Leo's eyes darted around the room, assessing his options. He was about to die. Running was his only choice. The front door was chained. Unbreakable. No wonder she'd been so eager to get him home. It was a trap. His gaze landed on the living room window. It wasn't far. If he could get through it, he'd be on the street. The only problem was her supernatural power. In the first playthrough, Helena's only skill was psychic assault, which he could escape if he got out of range. But now, as if reading his mind, Helena giggled. Don't even think about it, Leo. This is my domain. You can't escape. Leo stared at her, then let a gentle, resigned smile cross his lips. Helena, actually, in his experience, a max charisma smile could solve a lot of problems. And just as he expected, Helena paused, mesmerized by his expression. Actually, what, Leo? Do you have any last words? So I'm still gonna die, huh? Leo thought with a cold, internal smirk. In an emotion too fast to track, he spun around and bolted. The presence behind him froze for a split second. He didn't look back. He just ran for the window. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. The window was right there. Fueled by a desperate will to live, he scrambled onto the sill, his movements a blur. The light of the setting sun washed over him. Jump, and I'm free. The glimmer of hope lasted for a single, fleeting second. Then came a wet, sickening squelch. A sudden cold bloomed in his chest. His hands went limp, and he heard the rhythmic pat-pat-pat of liquid hitting the floor. New ability? Leo slowly looked down. A sharp, slimy tentacle had punched straight through his torso. How? From that far, crimson blood blossomed across his white shirt, soaking the fabric in an instant. The world spun, and his body crashed onto the cold floor. His thoughts grew fuzzy, his vision blurring at the edges. In the last moment before consciousness faded, he saw her, walking slowly toward him. Her face was blank, impassive. Her arms were no longer arms, but a writhing mass of tentacles. Then, everything went black. I hope every cheating bastard gets tortured to death and rots in hell. The shout ripped Leo from the void. He gasped, sucking in air like a drowning man, his chest heaving. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The sudden, violent motion startled the students around him. Leo, Chloe asked, looking at him with concern. Are you okay? You don't look so good. Leo stared at her familiar face, at the familiar classroom. For a split second, he was frozen in disbelief. I'm not dead. I'm alive. He frantically looked down at his chest. The white shirt was clean, pristine. Not a single drop of blood. But just a moment ago, he could have sworn he felt Helena's tentacle pierce his heart. He looked around, bewildered. The girl who'd been dumped was still crying. The other students, who had been consoling her, were now staring at him, curious about his outburst. Not only was he alive, but he was back in the classroom, right back where it all started. Time travel. Just as the question formed, the familiar game interface materialized before his eyes. Version 2. 0 update complete. Primary objective. Investigate the disappearance of a Blackwood Academy studentward. +10 to any attribute. Random item affinity system. Online potions / alchemy system. Online checkpoint updated or loads remaining. 4/5 warning. This game has no new game plus. For your own safety, please use your reloads wisely. Leo stared blankly at the text. So, in a few minutes, he'd have to face Helena all over again. And if he died 5 times, it was game over for real. Are you kidding me? He thought, a surge of frustration rising. Why did your system update take so long? You couldn't have shown up earlier? Griping wouldn't change anything. He knew this system was his only ticket to survival. He quickly scanned the new information. Version 2. 0 seemed mostly the same as the one he'd played, but the story chapter was completely new. He had no idea if this student disappearance case had anything to do with Helena, but since she was the heroine of the first chapter, it was a safe bet. His mind flashed back to his death. Her twisted, insane smile. The mind-shattering psychic assault. The tentacles that killed without a sound. He never would have imagined that Helena could become that. A terrifying, warped creature. Even now, he could feel the phantom pain of his heart being pierced. It was a visceral, soul-shredding agony. Even with a do-over, he never wanted to experience that again. Leo clenched his fists. Never again. He didn't have much time to think. A male student's voice cut through the classroom chatter. Hey, Leo, your girlfriend's here. It was happening. The classroom fell silent as all eyes turned to the door. Even though he was prepared, Leo's heart began to pound. He forced himself to stay calm, slowly turning his head to look at the girl bathed in sunlight. Excuse me, she said, her voice timid. Is my brother here? She stood there, just as before. A beautiful, pure girl who looked like a fairy. The boys stared, captivated. The girls whispered among themselves. None of them could have known that beneath that angelic exterior beat the heart of a monster. Leo, I finally found you. Her blue eyes were locked on him. She started running toward him. This time, Leo didn't wait for her to come to him. He unclenched his fists and took a deep breath. Survival was the priority. This was not the time to make enemies. He met her gaze with a warm smile, the kind an older brother would give his beloved younger sister. Helena. She stopped in front of him, suddenly flustered by the attention. She ducked her head shyly. Leo, let's go home. I've been waiting for you for so long. Leo just looked at her, his expression unwavering. If he hadn't died once already, he never would have seen the cracks in her flawless, pitiful act. But he knew now. If he angered her, if he made her think he was betraying her or cared about anyone else, she would snap. She would kill him. So, I can't say a single wrong word. The silence stretched for a moment. Helena looked up at him, cautiously. Leo, did I do something wrong? She asked, nervously fiddling with a lock of her hair. Not at all, Leo said, his smile gentle and reassuring. You just changed so much. I almost didn't recognize you. Oh, she looked down again, like a child who had been scolded. The atmosphere between them was a little strange, and Chloe, his deskmate, chimed in. Is this your sister, Leo? Leo nodded. Yeah, we haven't seen each other in a few years. Hearing she wasn't a girlfriend, but just a sister, Chloe visibly relaxed, sensing she still had a chance. She winked at Leo. You shouldn't be so distant with your little sister. Look, you're scaring her. Come on, sweetie, come to me. She reached out to take Helena's hand, but Leo moved faster. He stepped in front of Chloe, pulling Helena close. Chloe froze. Leo put an arm around Helena, shielding her from the others. My sister's shy, he said with a smile. She doesn't like being around new people. It's better if the current Helena doesn't talk to anyone from class, he thought. Who knows what she might overhear that could set her off. If there's nothing else, we'll be heading home. Bye. Chloe, mesmerized by his handsome face, just nodded dumbly. Okay, bye. Leo led Helena away, not looking back. On the way out of the building, Helena looked down, a guilty expression on her face. If you don't like me coming to your school, she started, I won't do it again. Leo shook his head. Of course I don't mind. I was just worried you'd be uncomfortable around strangers. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with surprise. Really? You weren't ashamed of me? Of course not. Leo gently stroked her pale hair. Why would I ever be ashamed of you? Hearing that, Helena beamed like a happy child, her eyes curving into beautiful crescents. So you really were thinking of me? You're the best, Leo. So, she began, looking up at him and finally asking the two questions. Can you not go to school anymore? I want you to stay home with me. Leo's expression didn't change. He kept his calm, smiling mask perfectly in place. But inside, his stomach was in knots. These two sentences were the trigger that had gotten him killed last time. He absolutely could not mess this up. Looking into Helena's hopeful, sky-blue eyes, Leo didn't hesitate for a second. I promise. Really? Her eyes grew impossibly wide. Of course. Leo's face was a perfect picture of sincerity. Life was a stage, and he was giving the performance of a lifetime. His maxed-out charisma was already a cheat code. Combined with his actual face, the effect was devastating. He looked at her, his smile dazzlingly gentle, and spoke in the most earnest tone he could muster. I love my little Helena more than anything. Why would I want to spend every day with you? Helena froze. She stared at his smile, so close, so magnetic, her eyes filled with a dazed adoration. Leo loves Helena. I love you too, Leo. But her reaction was more extreme than he'd anticipated. Her body began to tremble uncontrollably. She started muttering to herself, a strange, giddy smile on her face. Leo, a gentle Leo like this. This smile is mine. It can only be mine. Helena. Leo felt an immense force grip his hand, yanking him toward home. You belong to me, she whispered, her eyes darting around suspiciously, glaring at every passerby as if they were a threat. No one will take you away. Her expression began to flicker, shifting between joy and paranoia. Leo's carefully constructed calm began to crumble. He was getting scared. This isn't right. How did the right answer lead to this? He suddenly realized he might have overdone it. He hadn't considered that the current Helena was mentally unstable. Any strong stimulus, good or bad, could push her over the edge. The front door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Leo was back in the house. He turned to see Helena beaming, her excitement barely contained. I'll go make dinner for you. I have to run out for a minute. I've been practicing my cooking for 4 years. You wait here and be good. Hearing that she was leaving for a bit, Leo felt a wave of relief. But he never expected what happened next. A black shadow blurred past him, and in an instant, Helena was behind him. A sharp pain shot through his arms. Helena, where are you? A sharp click echoed in the silent house. He felt the cold weight of metal on his wrists. A pair of heavy handcuffs now bound his hands tightly behind his back. Leo stared at her, stunned. Helena looked at him, her smile widening. You have to wait here and be good, Leo. Don't try anything funny. If I find out, I'll get very angry. Author's note. This book will feature various types of Yanderas: aggressive, isolationist, possessive, dependent. A Yandera lover's dream. Fans of suspense and mystery will also enjoy it. There are many Lovecraftian elements, and the protagonist is a classic cosmic horror investigator. Be warned, some Yanderas are extremely aggressive, and the protagonist will often walk the line between life and death. If you can't handle that, please proceed with caution. I'm saying all this to find readers on the same wavelength and avoid unnecessary arguments. I'll post illustrations when I have time. The big house was cold and silent once more. After making sure Helena was truly gone, Leo twisted his cuffed hands behind his back. The restraints were solid, unbreakable with his current strength. The position made it nearly impossible to even try and pick the lock. He felt a wave of helplessness. She was treating him like a criminal. He had no intention of running, not after willingly coming back here with her. Leo walked slowly up to the second floor. Using his mouth, he managed to turn the knob and push open one of the doors. The room was pitch black. A large workbench dominated the center. This was his alchemy lab. In the game, this room was the main interface, where he used resources to brew potions and plan his containment strategies. This was the entire reason he'd agreed to come back to the house. In this world, supernatural power was a double-edged sword, always accompanied by corruption, chaos, and madness. Both humans and anomalies who wielded such power would inevitably be driven insane as they grew stronger. The more powerful you became, the more your perception expanded. You started hearing voices others couldn't hear, seeing things others couldn't see. You felt the call of the unspeakable things that were the source of your power. Your fragile mind would be battered, twisted, until you finally broke, becoming a raving, dangerous lunatic. That's what was happening to Helena. Leo needed to brew a specific suppressant potion to stabilize her corruption level. Only then could he successfully contain her again. But as he looked around, he saw that the shelves were bare. All the glass vials, beakers, and alchemical equipment were gone. The cabinets were empty. It didn't take a genius to figure out who was responsible. Helena knew he could brew things. That's why she cuffed him, to stop him from doing exactly this. Leo let out a small, humorless laugh. What Helena couldn't possibly know was that he was a player. He mentally opened the potions/alchemy interface. A floating screen appeared before him, displaying a list of materials and recipes. The lab equipment was just for show. The system did all the real work. Hybrid anomaly, Shoggoth, a writhing, tentacled, sanity-shattering abomination. Stability suppressant, basic X1 brewing potion. An animation of a potion being brewed appeared on the game screen. In the dark room, Leo kept glancing nervously at the crack under the door, waiting. Hurry up. Come on, hurry up. My life depends on this little bottle. The worst part was, after scavenging through his entire inventory, he realized he only had enough materials to make 4 useful potions for Helena. 1 basic potion for her human form, and 3 advanced ones for her monster form. He couldn't mix them, or they'd cancel each other out. So, in reality, he only had 1 shot. The reason was simple. In his first playthrough, he'd reached the late game where monster types were far more varied. He never bothered to stock up on materials for Helena since she'd already been safely contained. He never imagined he'd have to do it all over again. A notification chimed. Brewing complete. Leo's eyes lit up. Done. He turned his back, and with a swift, difficult motion, tucked the slender glass vial into his pants pocket. Just then, he heard footsteps on the stairs. The slow, deliberate creak of the floorboards sent his heart racing. She's back already? No way. He rushed to the door to leave. But as he turned, his blood ran cold. In the narrow crack of the door was an eye. A single, unblinking eye, watching him. The atmosphere turned instantly sinister. Leo's heart skipped a beat. The old wooden door groaned open. Helena stood there, her face a blank mask. Leo, what are you doing in here? Caught red-handed, Leo struggled to keep his composure. Oh, Helena, you're back. He smiled gently, gesturing vaguely toward the workbench. It's been 4 years. I just want to come see my old friends here. Hey, what took you so long? He asked, his tone light. What did you get for me? Helena held up a large paper bag. Bread, cheese, steak, and some cauliflower. Leo went to pat her head, then remembered his hands were cuffed. All my favorites. You're such a good girl, Helena. But she just stared at him, her expression unreadable. She walked into the room and turned on a gas lamp. The warm yellow light felt harsh and interrogating. Then, she walked past him to the workbench and began to meticulously inspect it. Leo could feel the cool glass of the potion against the skin. He prayed she wouldn't find it. After a thorough search, Helena confirmed that the workbench was exactly as she had left it. The tension in her face finally eased. Well, actually, I was thinking of making some potions for protection, Leo said, testing the waters. Oh, Helena turned, her brow furrowed in suspicion. Leo put on a worried expression. You probably haven't heard, but there's a student who went missing at Blackwood. Everyone's talking about it. Helena remained silent, just watching him. Leo continued, so I thought I'd come in here and whip something up. It's what I do best, after all. The best lies are woven with threads of truth. He met her gaze without flinching. Helena seemed to consider this, then nodded slightly. She must have heard the rumors. Leo. She walked over and gently hugged him. You probably don't realize this, but I'm very strong now. I won't let you get involved in dangerous things like that anymore. You just have to stay home and be with me. I won't let any harm come to you. Leo felt the warmth of her embrace and silently nodded. Okay, right now, he thought, the most dangerous thing in this house is you. Of course, he didn't dare say it. After leaving the lab, Helena added 3 more heavy locks to the door for good measure. Only then did she seem to relax, a smile returning to her face. You must be hungry, she said, looking at Leo, who was nodding obediently. Her smile grew wider. It used to be you cooking for me. Now, I can finally take care of you. She eagerly led the cuffed Leo to the head of the dining table, then started humming a tune as she prepared dinner. When the table was filled with delicious-smelling dishes, she took up a knife and fork, expertly cut a piece of steak smothered in sauce, and held it to Leo's lips. Leo hesitated. He looked around. The curtains were drawn tight, the windows boarded up. The entire house was shrouded in darkness, lit only by the flickering candlelight on the table, a perfect reflection of his mood. Don't you like it, Leo? Seeing her sweet smile, Leo couldn't refuse. He could only try to appeal to her sympathy. Helena, if you had to eat like this, would you be in a good mood? Leo. Helena's mouth opened slightly. She looked at his miserable expression and finally seemed to realize she'd gone too far. Let me take off your restraints, he urged, his voice patient. I already promised I'd stay with you. I won't break my word. Why are you still treating me like this? Like a prisoner? I'm very disappointed. Helena looked down, guilt written all over her face. I'm sorry, Leo. It's my fault. I was just scared. Scared you would disappear again. Leo held her gaze. I'm not going to disappear. Okay, then. Helena stood up and walked slowly toward him. As he felt the heavy cuffs being removed, Leo finally let out a long, slow breath of relief. Leo, Helena offered him the piece of steak again, her eyes full of expectation. At first, Leo suspected she might have poisoned the food, but then he thought about it. She was dead set on keeping him locked up in this dark, old house forever. She'd even turned the place into a fortress to prevent his escape. It wouldn't make sense to poison him. Still, he had no appetite, even though her cooking was, as she'd claimed, genuinely good. With a storm of emotions churning inside him, the food tasted like ash in his mouth. Is it good, Leo? Helena asked, watching him eagerly. It's good. Leo chewed a few times and forced himself to swallow. Really good. Helena's smile brightened. She held out a piece of a vegetable. Try this. You need a balanced diet. You can't just eat meat. Leo stared at the vegetable in front of him, then at Helena's smiling face. Her mood seemed to have stabilized. He decided to test the waters. Actually, I'm not hungry anymore. I'm full. He shouldn't have said that. Helena's face fell instantly. The temperature in the room plummeted. Helena affinity, 100 corruption level. 72 to Leo's horror. Her corruption level had ticked up. Oh, she hissed, her face dark, her lips pressed into a thin line. Her arms began to twitch and writhe faintly. It was a sign she was about to transform. You will not waste food. She glared at the long, food-laden table and enunciated each word with chilling precision. You will eat every last bite. What? Leo was stunned. Seriously? This big of a reaction? He forced a weak smile. Okay. I'll eat. Leo picked up a plate, swallowing hard. There was no way he could eat all this. But under Helena's dark gaze, he had no choice. He had to play along, hide his true intentions, and wait for the right moment to strike. Only then could he take control of her. Seeing him obediently start eating, Helena's expression softened. Corruption level, 71 dinner continued in silence. After finishing the steak and bread, Leo felt like he was going to burst. Thankfully, Helena was helping him out. While he ate, he stole glances at her. She had moved her chair right next to his, like a warden supervising a prisoner. But while she watched him, she was eating too. Leo noticed she ate incredibly fast, even faster than he did under duress. And she cleaned every plate until it shone. It reminded him of her backstory from a game. Helena had always been a big eater, her small frame seemingly housing a pocket dimension for a stomach. And whenever she ate, she would have an expression of pure, blissful satisfaction. This time was no different. It probably had to do with her childhood. Life on the streets had left deep scars. The day Leo found her in the warrens of New Haven, she was a tiny, emaciated child, starved to the brink of death. In that filthy slum, her first words to him were, "I'm so hungry." Abandoned by her family who saw her as a monster, she had escaped from an orphanage and was constantly on the run from agents of the Bureau of Special Investigations. Hunger and cold had been her only companions for most of her young life. That's why she had such a manic obsession with food, especially hot food. Thinking about this, Leo watched her stuff food into her mouth without pause, and a complex emotion stirred within him. If it weren't for everything that had happened, this scene, a brother and sister eating quietly at the dinner table, would have been rather heartwarming. But the memory of that soul-tearing pain was still fresh. Every time he thought of it, a phantom ache flared in his chest. His sister was a monster, an out-of-control anomaly who had already killed him. In her current state, if she'd done it once, she would do it again. That was certain. His life was not in his own hands. It depended entirely on her whims. He hated this feeling. He hated this selfish, twisted love. He could not, under any circumstances, allow himself to feel pity for her. His hand instinctively crept toward his pants pocket. Leo, can't you eat anymore? The sudden silence at the table was deafening. Helena was watching him. Is the food I made not good? No, of course not. Leo's hand shot away from his pocket and reached for a bowl of tomato soup. I just needed a break. It's tiring to eat nonstop, you know. He tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but Helena didn't take the bait. She wiped her mouth with a napkin, her gaze turning sharp and analytical as she looked him up and down. Leo felt a chill run down his spine as her scrutinizing eyes raked over him. Did she see? Don't you like living with me, Leo? She asked, tilting her head, her smile a mask of sweet innocence. Of course I do, Leo denied immediately. He was confused. Why would she ask that all of a sudden? Had she figured out his plan? Good. Helena glanced around the empty house. It was true that the two-story Victorian felt a bit lonely with just the two of them. She hugged herself, her small frame shrinking, radiating a sense of insecurity. Even though you have me to keep you company, I think you might still feel lonely. Lonely? Leo frowned, wondering what she was getting at. Helena stared into his eyes, and a strange smile bloomed on her face. Even though you never say it. You actually miss them, don't you? A jolt of pure ice went through Leo's veins. This was a demonic test. The exact same question that had led to his murder last time. Them? Who's them? Leo laughed, a perfectly natural, dismissive sound. I only need you, Helena. Oh, she purred, her smile deepening with meaning. Really? Really? Oh. Helena stood up and went back to the kitchen, rummaging for something. Good. I thought you might still be missing the days when you were surrounded by girls. Huh? Of course not. Leo chuckled weakly, but his smile vanished the moment Helena returned, dragging something dark and heavy behind her. Thump! She tossed a heavy, dark, spherical object onto the floor like a piece of trash. It rolled slowly across the wooden planks, coming to a stop at Leo's feet. A thick, coppery smell of blood filled the air. And in that moment, as he saw what the object was, Leo's masterful acting shattered. He couldn't stay calm anymore. His pupils contracted. Sheer terror flooded him. It was a head. A woman's head. The head stopped at his feet, its dead eyes staring up at him, wide with fear and disbelief. He knew her. It was his deskmate, Chloe. Guess what I did while I was out, Leo? Helena's voice was bright and cheerful, a horrifying contrast to the scene. She was practically beaming at his shocked expression. I ran into your little friend from school while I was shopping. This girl really likes you, doesn't she? When she saw me, she even said hi. She was probably trying to get on my good side, so she could get closer to you. Helena's voice turned venomous as she glanced down at the head. Ha ha ha. Stupid, worthless woman. How dare she have designs on my Leo? D. She screamed the word, her clear eyes turning bloodshot with rage. She raised her foot and stomped down on the head. It burst with a sickening squelch. The smell of blood intensified, thick and nauseating. After her outburst, she looked back at Leo, her manic energy subsiding. She reached out and lovingly stroked his trembling cheek. You promised me, Leo. You promised you'd stay with me forever. From now on, there won't be any more women to bother us. In the dim dining room, the flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on Leo's face, making his expression unreadable. Leo, seeing him silent, his head bowed, Helena smiled. Is there something you want to say? Finally, Leo moved. He clenched his fists, trying to still the tremors running through his body. A storm of indescribable, complex emotions raged within him. He looked up, his eyes meeting her terrifying gaze. And in his mind, there was only one word. Monster. Why are you looking at me like that, Leo? Helena's eyes narrowed. That's the same way they used to look at me. Leo's silence was an accusation, and his gaze was like a physical blow. A monster? Is that it? You think I'm a monster, too? A cold, sharp laugh escaped her lips. Her body began to tremble violently. Ha, I knew it. I knew it. You never saw me as a sister. You always saw me as a monster. You're getting angry at me. For a woman like that, her arms began to writhe and twist, then exploded outward into a gruesome bouquet of writhing tentacles, slimy, wet, and sickeningly serpentine. A powerful psychic assault slammed into Leo's mind. Distortion, fear, suffocating dread. His body froze. You are under intense psychic assault. Performing sanity check. Leo clenched his fists so hard his knuckles turned white, fighting against the tide of mental contamination. Ever since he'd returned to the house, he'd been preparing for this moment. Sanity check. Success. Sanity -0. Maybe it was his ferocious will to live, but this time, luck was on his side. The moment his body was his own again, he fumbled for the glass vial in his pocket. Helena seemed surprised that he could still move, but her surprise quickly curdled into a sneer. 6 tentacles whipped through the air, converging on him like deadly spears. But Leo's potion was already airborne. With a sharp crack, the vial shattered against Helena's face. Shards of glass flew everywhere, and the acrid smell of the chemical filled the air. The tentacles froze, inches from his face, then recoiled as if they'd been electrocuted. Helena's entire body convulsed, and she let out a monstrous, inhuman shriek. Eark! The furious, piercing scream echoed through the old house. Seeing her reaction, Leo felt a flicker of relief. He quickly checked her status. His real trump card wasn't a potion or his maxed-out charisma. It was his containment authority. It was this house itself. As long as her stats met the requirements, he could successfully contain her. No matter what she was, no matter how terrifying, she would be locked away in one of the guest rooms, unable to escape. But this time, he had celebrated too soon. Helena hybrid anomaly affinity, 100 corruption level, 65 threat level, 4-star, high danger. Description: a twisted being whose love for you has turned to hate. He had no idea what she'd been through in the last 4 years, but her tolerance was far greater than in his first playthrough. Her corruption level was still well above 50. She was even more insane. With another piercing shriek, her tentacles began to lash out indiscriminately, smashing everything in their path. The dining room erupted in a cacophony of splintering wood and shattering glass. As the table split in two, Leo grabbed a steak knife for defense and scrambled backward. He glanced around at the house Helena had turned into a prison. There was nowhere to run. He only had one option: force a containment. Even if the odds were slim, he had to try. Leo opened his interface and, ignoring her current berserk state, slammed the contain button. Containment in progress. The entire house seemed to groan. Helena realized what was happening. Her bloodshot, terrifying eyes locked onto Leo with pure hatred. You won't. 2 tentacles shot out, faster than arrows. Blood sprayed. A cry of agony was torn from Leo's lips as he collapsed to the floor. The tentacles had punched straight through his legs, shattering the bone and immobilizing him. The tentacles twisted inside his flesh. Amid his tortured screams, Helena's body levitated slightly, using the tentacles as anchors to land gracefully in front of him. Containment check. Failed target uncontained. So much for luck. Leo lay on the floor in a heap, too weak to even feel anger anymore. He just stared up at the being looming over him. Her angelic face, now streaked with blood and glass shards, was twisted into a grotesque mask of victory. With the writhing tentacles framing her, she looked like a demon clawing its way out of hell. So close, she purred, her voice dripping with mockery. You almost had me. My dear brother, you really are something else. A slimy tentacle slithered across his skin, and he was lifted into the air, forced to meet her gaze. The movement toward his wounds, and a low groan of pain escaped him. Blood and sweat dripped from his face. You almost had me fooled. All those promises you made, they were all lies, weren't they? Helena seemed to savor his pained expression. You don't want to be with me. You don't love me. You think I'm a monster. She giggled. You're perfect in every way, Leo. Your looks, your charm, your family, even your courage. There's just one thing wrong with you. The tentacles tightened their grip. The coppery smell of his own blood filled his senses. He was losing too much, his thoughts growing hazy. You're just too good at lying. I bet every girl in the world would fall for your lies, wouldn't they? You're a real heartbreaker, Leo. She brought him closer, embracing him with her monstrous form, her voice dropping to a tender whisper. But even if they were lies, I was so happy today. Truly I was. Even though you're crippled now, don't worry. I'll take care of you. This way, you'll never be able to leave my side. Isn't that wonderful? Let's just stay here, in this house. We'll be together, forever. Her words were cut short. A soft squelch, the sound of flesh being pierced. Helena let out a sharp gasp, and her grip on Leo loosened. He fell from her grasp. She looked down in disbelief. The steak knife was buried in her chest, perfectly placed over her heart. Leo, lying at her feet, managed a weak, mocking smile. "An eye for an eye," he rasped. "Now we're even." A boundless, unrestrained fury erupted from her. The tentacles flew into a frenzy, their tips hardening into razor-sharp blades. For the second time, Leo felt them tear through his body. He collapsed into the spreading pool of his own blood. His vision blurred, his life fading fast. But he was still conscious, just barely. He saw Helena clutch her chest, an expression of profound sadness on her face as she stumbled toward him. "So, this is your answer, then?" she whispered, a self-deprecating smile on her lips. "Yes, a person like you. Was never meant for me. Was he? I'm a monster. Monster, 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 monster." She repeated the word, a mad litany, her face flickering between guilt and hatred. "Art." She clutched her head, as if trying to block out some terrible memory. After a long moment, she grew calm. She looked down at Leo's body, still and lifeless. She curled up beside him, finding a comfortable position, and leaned against his side. The simple posture seemed to grant her a measure of security, a peace she hadn't felt in years, like a child returning to its mother's embrace. Though she couldn't even remember her mother's face. "We're going to be together forever now, Leo," she said, her voice filled with a happy, serene finality. She smiled and pulled the knife from her chest. She made no move to stop the bleeding. She just watched as her lifeblood pumped out, her face growing paler and paler. In the dim, hazy candlelight, the two figures, entwined in a pool of blood, seemed frozen in a twisted, eternal tableau. Leo smiled and closed his eyes. "I hope every cheating bastard gets tortured to death and rots in hell." Leo's eyes snapped open. He was back in the classroom. He greedily sucked in the stale air, a phantom sensation of his lungs filling with blood, making him gasp. When they'd been pierced, every breath had been a wet, drowning cough. It had been unbearable. "Leo," Chloe jumped at his sudden movement. "What's wrong? Are you okay? Should I get the school nurse?" Leo looked at her, alive and well, and a complicated feeling washed over him. "No, just a nightmare. I'm fine." Chloe, seeing another chance to talk to him, leaned in. "Oh, hey, by the way," but Leo just turned away, his face a cold mask. He wasn't going to say another word. The air grew awkward. Chloe huffed and turned away. Jerk, she thought. What's his problem? So much for being a gentleman. All that for a pretty face. She had no idea that Leo's silence was for her own good. Return TO checkpoint. Blackwood Academy. Magitech class air loads remaining. 3/5 another death. Only 3 chances left. The confidence he'd felt earlier was gone. He felt like a pawn in a game he couldn't win, destined to be sacrificed over and over. The power gap between them was just too massive. This new Helena was nothing like the weak girl he remembered. He had no desire to fight her, no desire to even try. This world was huge. It wasn't just this school and that house. He didn't like her. He didn't want to see her. So why couldn't he just run? The thought solidified into a plan. Leo stood up abruptly. He had to get out of here before Helena showed up. The dumped girl was still crying, surrounded by her friends. Leo impatiently pushed through the crowd and headed for the door. "Hey, watch it. What's with that guy? New student, and he's already acting like he owns the place." He ignored their comments, his long strides carrying him quickly out of the room. A few minutes after he left, the familiar call came from the doorway. "Hey, Leo, your girlfriend's here." "Lao." The remaining students looked at the beautiful girl in the doorway. "Oomph. He left ages ago," Chloe said with a roll of her eyes. Helena's shy facade dropped. "My brother." "Leo, where did he go?" she asked urgently. "Who knows?" one of the students said with a shrug, gesturing toward the hallway window. "He just left. Can't be far." "Oh, thank you." Helena's gaze shot outside, her eyes scanning the crowds for him. It was the end of the school day, and the main plaza was teeming with students laughing and talking. But it didn't take her long. Her eyes locked onto a single figure walking briskly toward the main gate. A small, knowing smile touched her lips. "Found you, brother." Leo left the school grounds without a backward glance, his face a grim mask. He scanned the familiar yet alien streets. The sanctuary house was his trump card, but right now it was a death trap located in a remote area where he could scream his lungs out and no one would hear. The school was another dead end. Even though it was called an Academy of Magitech, it was more tech than magic. They didn't teach spells. They trained engineers for the Magitech industry. Basically a bunch of STEM nerds. But outside, he had a chance. The academy was near the upper district where the rich lived. It was safer there. And the city had official supernatural organizations, like the Order of the Holy Edict or the New Haven Police Department's own Bureau of Special Investigations, which handled hostile entity problems. He had no idea where to find the order, so he quickly decided on the police. Just running wasn't a permanent solution. He had no money, and he didn't want to get picked up as a runaway and sent right back. Besides, he had to face this eventually. Getting a powerful outside force involved was his best bet. His brisk pace through the streets attracted the attention of two beat cops. "Hey, you, stop right there." Leo looked over. On the corner, two officers were watching him warily. They wore dark blue, almost black greatcoats and rounded, bowler-style police caps with the NHBD insignia front and center. When they saw Leo's face break into a wide, relieved grin as he ran toward them, they exchanged a confused look and their hands instinctively went to their sidearms. "Stop! Don't move! Hands in the air!" They drew their standard-issue revolvers. Leo's smile didn't waver as he obediently raised his hands. "Help! Someone's trying to kill me. It's a monster, an anomaly, a hostile entity." The cops were even more confused now. They'd never seen someone being chased for their life look so damn happy about it. Was this some kind of prank? Blackwood was full of rich kid troublemakers who got a kick out of messing with the police. "All right, kid, slow down. What's going on? Where's this monster?" "She's right behind me. I know she's found me by now." Leo glanced nervously over his shoulder. The city was full of people. Helena could be hiding anywhere. One officer started patting Leo down while the other scanned the crowded street. As usual, the upper district of New Haven was safe and prosperous. No sign of any monster. After finding no weapons on Leo, the officers listened to his story, their expressions growing more and more skeptical. "Your sister turned into a monster, and she tracked you to your school? To kill you? One officer pulled down Leo's lower eyelid. "Kid, you on something?" Leo sighed. This was the problem with regular cops. They could go their whole careers without ever glimpsing the darkness that lay just beneath the surface of the world. If you were talking to the shoot first, ask questions, never order the Holy Edict, they'd probably have quarantined the whole block by now. "I'm telling the truth," Leo said, forcing a patient smile. When he saw they still didn't believe him, he played his card. "Look, you must know Captain Raymonds. He's an old friend of mine." Captain Raymonds? The name got their attention. Captain Raymonds was a legend in the department, a mysterious figure who had solved some of the city's most difficult cases. "You're telling me you know Captain Raymonds?" One of them asked, looking him up and down, clearly unconvinced. The other officer laughed. "Everyone in New Haven knows Captain Raymonds. Kid, if you're going to prank us, at least come up with something original. We've heard this one before. It's old." Leo stared at them, exasperated. A major case lands in their lap, and they just blow it off. No wonder they were still walking a beat at their age. He looked behind him again, his eyes scanning the passing maglev trains and steam buses, trying to see every face in the crowd. Helena had to be out there, watching. The cops were about to walk away. Suddenly, an idea hit him. The safest place in all of New Haven was inside the police station. A grin spread across his face. He reached out and grabbed the arm of the officer who was turning to leave. "Hey, kid, what do you think you're?" Before he could finish, a fist slammed into his face. Art. The punch was powerful, fueled by Leo's frustration. The officer went down hard. Assaulting an officer. He's assaulting an officer. The cop scrambled to his feet, clutching his already swelling eye, and fumbled for his gun again. Leo raised his hands in surrender. "Sorry, officer," he said with a completely innocent smile. "You wouldn't believe me." After assaulting a police officer, Leo got exactly what he wanted, a pair of silver bracelets and a free trip to the local precinct. Inside an interrogation room at the NHPD's East Division, staring at the rusty metal bars of the holding cell, Leo felt an unfamiliar sense of security. Serial killers, fugitives with 7-figure bounties, even rogue occultists who'd gone mad from their research, they'd all been held here. In a way, they were his cellmates. Outside, heavily armed officers patrolled the corridor. It was shift change, so most of the East Division's force was in the building. For the moment, Leo was completely safe. "What are you looking at, kid? Planning a breakout?" The officer in charge of his interrogation eyed him with displeasure as Leo craned his neck to look around. "Not at all," Leo said sincerely. "You couldn't pay me to leave right now." The officer slapped a file down on the table and stared at the strange young man. "Weirdo, am I getting too old for this? Never thought I'd see the day someone begged to be put in jail." Officer," Leo said, his expression serious. "What? Can I stay a few more days?" The officer slammed his hand on the table, his patience finally snapping. What do you think this is, a hotel? You can't just check in and out whenever you want. Leo couldn't help but smile. Seeing that the kid showed absolutely no remorse, the officer's temper flared. He opened the file, cleared his throat, and began to read in a stern, official voice. Leo Sterling, sole heir to the Sterling estate, parents deceased. Inherited his father's property in the West District. First-year student at Blackwood Academy. 4 years ago, you were involved in the Blackwater cult incident, after which you withdrew from school due to illness and went abroad to convalesce. You returned to New Haven 3 days ago and re-enrolled at the academy. Records show you're an only child. You don't have a sister. As for this Helena you mentioned, I've checked every orphanage and welfare file in the city. There's no record of her. No legal identity whatsoever. We also sent a unit to your house. They just got back. No sign of anyone named Helena. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Given the number of little lunatics that come out of your school, I'm having a hard time believing a word of your story. Leo listened intently, nodding along. It made sense that the NHPD couldn't find Helena. The Warrens were a black hole of undocumented people. The fact that her old orphanage records were gone, too, meant she'd probably erased them herself over the last 4 years. The officer's report also filled in some blanks for him. So, the game had patched the 4-year gap in his history. The Blackwater cult case was the last chapter he'd been playing before he was transported, a brutally difficult level he'd been stuck on for ages, full of twisted monsters and insane cultists. It was a plausible cover story. He'd gotten sick there and spent 4 years recovering overseas. The officer looked at Leo, who was nodding along as if this were a fascinating lecture, and felt a headache coming on. Any case involving anomalies or the occult had to be treated with the utmost seriousness. Even if this kid was just pulling a prank, he had to follow protocol. While I still can't verify anything you've told me, I've notified your so-called old friend, Captain Raymonds. He's out of the city on a case, but he'll be back soon. The officer grunted. You'd better not be lying to me. Filing a false report, causing us to deploy this many officers. Even for a student, the consequences will be severe. Leo looked at the officer. Despite his gruff exterior, he was a good cop. Thank you, officer. The officer closed the file and left the interrogation room with a huff. We'll be moving you to a holding cell shortly. Stay put. Bye, officer. Leo waved politely. The room fell silent again. Leo leaned back in his chair, listening to the distant sounds of shouting and sobbing from other rooms. If Captain Raymonds didn't come back today, he'd be here for a full 24 hours. If he did, Leo would be handed over to the Bureau of Special Investigations. Either way, he was safe for today. The thought was almost dizzying. After dying over and over, never even surviving to see his second day, was he actually going to make it through this one? As he relaxed, he started planning his next steps. All his previously contained anomalies were gone, leaving him with only his base stats and no skills. His first priority after getting out of this mess was to get back to his sanctuary, his house, and get his alchemy lab running again. Those potions were his only real defense. As he was thinking, a strange, sudden silence fell over the entire precinct. The shouting, the crying, it all just stopped. Leo frowned, his eyes fixed on the bar doorway. A heavy, rhythmic footstep echoed down the corridor. A long, dark shadow stretched across the floor, growing closer and closer to his cell. The footsteps made Leo's heart hammer against his ribs. He stood up, his body tense. Who is it? The footsteps stopped. A man in a specialized black police uniform stood on the other side of the bars, jingling a set of keys. Leo stared at him and gave a slight nod. The strange officer nodded back, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. He sat down opposite Leo, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. Bureau of Special Investigations. Agent Calder, we received your report regarding an anomaly. We need more information. Hearing he was from the BSI, Leo relaxed. You could just said so. Gave me a heart attack. Leo recounted his story to Agent Calder, explaining the threat Helena posed. But he had to leave out the parts about reloading saves, which meant he couldn't fully convey the absolute terror of the situation. It was the same reason the first officer had been so skeptical. A Shoggoth, you say? Calder mused, his expression thoughtful. I hate tentacles. This is troublesome. You could dispatch a BSI tactical team, right? Leo pressed. Take them with me to the house. I know you guys have some powerful operatives. Our agents are not so easily deployed, Calder said with a slight shake of his head. He looked up at Leo. First, tell me about your so-called sister. This monster, Helena. What is she really like? Leo frowned. At this point, it was hard to describe how he felt about her. She used to be a timid, fragile little girl who followed him around like a shadow. severely lacking in affection. She was sensitive and insecure. That much was clear from her in-game dialogue. She had her quirks, like her obsessive love for food and the way she talked to her favorite stuffed animal. When she had cooked that huge meal for him, her face a mixture of nervousness and hope. For a split second, he had actually felt a pang of pity for her. Pity? For her? The thought was absurd. She had killed him twice, each death more brutal than the last. But the pity was there, and it coexisted with his resentment. He pitied her, but who was there to pity him? Every time he remembered the indescribable pain of his deaths, a white-hot rage would consume him. He knew her mind was broken, a side effect of her powers, that the real Helena wasn't this monster. But he was still furious. He used to be the one playing the game. Now the game was playing him, and the whiplash from that reversal was a wound that wouldn't heal. Thinking of this, Leo's eyes narrowed, his gaze turning cold. He told Agent Calder everything, his voice growing hoarse by the time he finished. Calder sat perfectly still, seemingly unfazed by the long story. He propped his chin on his hand, mulling over what he'd heard. A dark and terrifying anomaly. Disgusting, slimy tentacles. Mentally unstable, cunning, and deceptive. A beautiful facade hiding a truly twisted monster. Calder nodded. Yes, I understand. Leo watched him. So, are you going to get me out of here? I need your department's protection. Calder didn't answer. He just stared at Leo, his expression unchanging. So, that's what you really think of me, brother? That I'm that disgusting? The voice changed. The deep, masculine rumble transformed into a high, sharp, feminine hiss. Leo stared in horror as the man before him began to contort. Something was moving under his skin, reshaping his body. You? A sickening, wet, squelching sound filled the silent interrogation room. Before Leo's eyes, the man known as Agent Calder twisted and shrank, his police uniform sloughing off a smaller, female form. Helena stood before him, wearing the BSI uniform. Helena. Leo's eyes were wide with disbelief. She could do that too? It was only then that he noticed the blood seeping under the door, spreading across the floor of the corridor like a crimson tide. That's why the precinct had gone silent. How many people did she kill? The world spun. He felt as if an invisible net had dropped from the sky, ensnaring him. No matter where he ran, it would tighten around him, suffocating him. Brother, Helena's face, dark with rage, stretched into a grotesque, humorless smile. She was furious. Utterly, incandescently furious. So, that's how you've always seen me. I'm so disappointed, Leo, but don't worry. Her arms trembled, then melted into the familiar, disgusting mass of tentacles. Their soft tips hardened, growing scales sharpening into razor-like blades. Even if you don't love me, it doesn't matter. As long as I love you, we'll be together forever soon enough. The bladed tentacles unfurled like a blooming corpse flower, a vision of grotesque beauty. Leo watched them all turn toward him, and, helplessly, he closed his eyes. I hope every cheating bastard gets tortured to death and rots in hell. Waking up in the classroom again, Leo felt nothing. He was just numb. He clutched his chest, his expression blank, as he surveyed the scene. The crying girl, the angry classmates, Chloe stealing glances at him. It was so familiar it felt like coming home. Return TO checkpoint. Blackwood Academy. Magitech class airloads remaining. 2/5 2 lives left. Leo slumped in his chair, a profound sense of powerlessness washing over him. He tried different strategies, but the result was always the same. Each death more gruesome than the last. But even though he was numb, he hadn't given up. This was his life, and he valued it more than anything. His last run, though a failure, hadn't been a total loss. He'd gained crucial intel. Helena race. Hybrid anomaly. Human 95%. Shoggoth 5%. Stats. Strength. 83. Constitution. 54 agility. 82 charisma. 76 perception. Unknown sanity. Unknown abilities. Mimicry. Regeneration. Psychic assault. Tentacle strike. Through trial and error, he was finally closing the information gap. He wouldn't die because of what he didn't know about the last 4 years anymore. This was intel paid for with his life. He just hadn't expected the transformed Helena to have an ability like mimicry. It meant she could disguise herself as anyone, infiltrate his surroundings without him ever knowing. The thought was terrifying. Even though he knew she hadn't found the classroom yet, a paranoid part of him suspected everyone around him. Was that Chloe? Or was it Helena? Leo, what's wrong? Chloe asked, looking at him strangely as he scanned the room. What are you looking at? Nothing. Leo's gaze settled on her. There was one silver lining. Chloe's head was still attached to her shoulders. She hadn't been killed by Helena. This meant the outcome wasn't set in stone. The future could be changed. The thought gave him a sliver of hope. To survive, he needed patience and a little bit of luck. Chloe shifted uncomfortably under his direct stare. Is there something on my face? No, you're fine. The thought solidified a new plan, and a genuine smile touched Leo's lips. Just, for your own safety, don't talk to me later, okay? The full force of his maxed-out charisma hit her, and she blushed, looking down at her desk. It took a second for his strange words to register. Huh, she asked, blinking in confusion. What did that even mean? But Leo's smile was gone. He said nothing more, turning to face the front of the room, sitting perfectly still, waiting. Hey, Leo, your girlfriend's here. Along with everyone else, Leo turned to look at the beautiful girl in the doorway. It was starting again. Excuse me, is my brother here? Leo smiled warmly and waved. Helena, I'm right here. Leo, I finally found you. She gathered her dress and ran to him. Leo's smile was flawless. He opened his arms to her. Under the golden light of the setting sun, the beautiful boy and girl embraced. It was a picturesque, romantic scene. Their classmates sighed with envy and jealousy, completely unaware of the deadly undercurrents swirling beneath the surface. In his arms, Helena looked up shyly. Leo, let's go home. I've been waiting for you for so long. Leo nodded gently. Okay. His mind was racing, but his smile never wavered. The stakes of this performance were life and death. A moment later, a male student called out to him. Leo, Professor wants to see you. In her office, after class. Leo's brow furrowed slightly. If he ignored the Helena factor, what would he normally do? He'd probably go to the office. In that instant, an idea sparked in his mind. He stopped and turned to the student. Where's the professor's office? The student, the class president, pointed down the hall. Go straight, turn left, and when you see the statue of the founder, turn right. It's the third door on your left. Professor Evelyn's office. Thanks. Leo nodded. Leo, aren't we going home? Helena asked, her voice small. I have to take care of something important. You wait here for me. I'll be right back, Leo said, patting her shoulder reassuringly. Oh, okay. Seeing his serious expression, Helena didn't argue. She nodded obediently and stood there, watching him walk away. The moment he rounded the corner, out of her sight, Leo broke into a run. He had a theory. Maybe he needed to get himself and Helena tangled up in something bigger. It was dangerous, but danger came with opportunity. It was better than this endless loop of solitary death. He still didn't know how Helena was connected to the Ghost of Blackwood Academy case, but if it was a student disappearance, it would attract the authorities' attention. The bigger the incident, the better. And more importantly, following the main quest was the only way to get rewards. Though thinking about rewards right now felt premature, his mind churning, Leo finally arrived at the third office door. Evelyn, Professor, the nameplate read. Below it in smaller text were her titles. Lecturer in Basic and Applied Magitech Theory, Advanced Divination and Occult Studies, Department Head, Acting Counselor from Magitech Class. She had a lot of titles. Leo pictured a wise, middle-aged woman with sharp, intelligent eyes. He took a deep breath and knocked. Come in. A voice answered from inside, but to Leo's surprise, it was Young. With permission granted, Leo pushed the door open and stepped inside. The atmosphere in the office wasn't what he'd expected. The blinds were only half drawn, casting the room in a dim, moody light. It was clear Professor Evelyn was a reader. Bookshelves lined nearly every wall, crammed with thick, well-worn volumes. Leo's eyes scanned the spines out of curiosity. Divination, Astrology Today, New Haven Style, The Beauty Almanac. A hodgepodge of everything and anything, but not a single textbook related to her actual field. It felt less like a professor's office and more like a private study. How are you feeling, Leo? Are you recovering well? Professor Evelyn was hunched over her desk, engrossed in a manuscript. She seemed busy, not even glancing up at him. How does she not ruin her eyes in this light? Leo grumbled internally as he approached her desk. I think so. I'm probably fine now. He wasn't lying. He had no idea what sickness he'd had. It came out of nowhere, and it vanished just as mysteriously. The system still hadn't given him a debrief, and he'd only found out about it from other people. You're not sure about your own body? Evelyn looked up, a flicker of surprise in her eyes, and her gaze landed on Leo's face. As she observed him, Leo studied her. He'd been struck by how young she sounded from outside the door, but seeing her up close, she seemed almost impossibly so. The professor, with all her accolades, looked to be 27, maybe 28 at most. If it weren't for her mature, professional attire, she could have passed for a grad student who'd just finished her thesis. And it wasn't just her youth. Professor Evelyn was stunning. She had long, wavy brown hair and deep, forest green eyes. Her features were delicate, her skin pale, and she had a figure that her tailored blazer couldn't entirely conceal. Since when did every NPC in this game have main character looks? She could easily hold her own against the heroines from his first playthrough. Evelyn sized him up for a moment before letting out a soft laugh. You do look a little worn out. Listless. Of course I'm worn out. Leo muttered to himself. After dying that many times, it's a miracle I haven't gone completely insane. Seeing the weary expression on his face, Professor Evelyn offered a comforting tone. Your freshman courses aren't too demanding. Just make sure you get plenty of rest. I'll be your advisor this year, so if you ever feel unwell, just come to me and I'll sign off on absence. Thank you, Professor. I appreciate your concern. Leo managed a grateful smile. Young, beautiful, and considerate of her students. He'd never had a professor this decent in his entire life. Oh, right. I almost forgot the real reason I called you in. Evelyn pulled a thick file from a drawer. The academy kept your student records active, but now that you're back, we still have to go through the official reinstatement process. She handed him a fountain pen. It's a lot of paperwork, so don't rush. Take your time. Okay, thanks. Leo instinctively reached for the pen, but his fingers accidentally brushed against hers. Her skin was smooth, surprisingly cool. Evelyn pulled her hand back with a start. Oh, sorry about that, Leo said with an apologetic smile. It's fine. It should have been a minor, forgettable moment. But then, Evelyn Affinity, 32. Leo frowned at the interface that had just materialized in his vision. He hadn't expected the accidental contact to trigger the game's affinity system. Until now, the only person to activate it had been Helena. Now Professor Evelyn was on the list. It wasn't a total shock. In the game, any named character had an affinity meter. A high affinity could be helpful for completing quests, and reaching 50 or the maximum of 100 would grant certain rewards. But compared to the game's designated anomaly heroines, those rewards were usually trivial. The massive payouts and the key to unlocking the next chapter came from successful containments. In his first playthrough, he'd always treated the affinity rewards from regular characters as chump change. But things were different now. He desperately needed those little boosts. It was his own damn fault for dumping all his points into charisma for that evil route playthrough, leaving his physical stats barely better than an average person's. Well then, he thought, his gaze lingering on Evelyn as a decision formed in his mind. I'm sorry, Professor. This might put us both in danger, but I don't have a choice. What is this? Some kind of scumbag simulator? In the dimly lit office, Leo stood at the desk, quietly filling out the forms. Evelyn moved away from her desk and thoughtfully pulled the blinds fully open. The sunlight that streamed and wasn't blinding, but it finally brightened the room. When she turned back, Evelyn noticed something was wrong. Her student's brow was furrowed, and the pen in his hand seemed to tremble. Leo, what's wrong? You've suddenly gone pale. Leo pressed a hand to his forehead, his body slumping against the desk for support. Seeing him sway, Evelyn rushed over and grabbed his arm, afraid he was about to collapse. The sudden movement closed the distance between them. As she leaned over him, her black pencil skirt, cinched at the waist, highlighted the full, alluring curve of her chest. A captivating, subtle fragrance drifted from her. Leo didn't dare look, forcing his gaze up to meet her worried, forest green eyes. Sorry, Professor. I guess I overestimated my recovery, Leo said, offering a weak, pained smile. Quick, sit down and rest. Evelyn guided him into her own office chair. I have some medicine here. Let me get it for you. She turned away. Wait, what are your exact symptoms? I have no idea what my symptoms are, other than a sudden flair for the dramatic. Despite the internal sarcasm, Leo kept the act up. He shook his head weakly. Sometimes, I can't concentrate. The doctors couldn't find anything wrong. Don't worry about the medicine. It won't help. Professor, you don't have to worry about me. I'll be fine if I just sit for a minute. You stubborn boy. Evelyn walked back over, her expression a mix of frustration and concern. She handed him a glass of warm water. You shouldn't push yourself so hard if you're not well. I have to, Leo insisted, shaking his head again before looking up at her with an expression of intense earnestness. Professor, I love learning. I've always yearned to swim in the ocean of knowledge. Studying is my greatest passion. God only knew how he kept a straight face. The lie was so blatant he wanted to laugh at himself. But Professor Evelyn bought it completely. She looked at him with a gentle scolding in her eyes. You silly boy. What good are your studies if you don't have your health? She softly touched his cheek, then pressed the back of her hand against his forehead. You feel a little warm. It's probably a low-grade fever. Some prescription meds should clear that up. I'm really fine, Professor. I just need to rest, Leo lied on. I still have a few problem sets I need to finish today. Evelyn looked at this dedicated student, this good kid, who was battling illness while still trying to keep up with his studies, and her forest green eyes softened. Affinity, 39. Seeing the jump in her affinity score, Leo breathed an internal sigh of relief. It was true. Professors loved a dedicated student. The gamble had paid off. Of course, just professing a love for learning wasn't enough. Plenty of students loved to learn. The library was probably still packed right now. It all came down to presentation. A pale, handsome young man in a white collared shirt, looking melancholic as he clutched a glass of warm water, all while being so passionate about his education. What professor, especially a young one, could resist? It was a recipe for an overflow of sympathy. The affection in Professor Evelyn's gaze was now unmistakable. Leo suddenly felt that his 100 points in charisma hadn't been a complete waste after all. They chatted about his coursework, then about campus life. The administration requires so much paperwork. Sometimes those bureaucrats drive me crazy, Evelyn complained, clearly not a fan of the school's higher-ups. But don't you worry about it. You go home and rest. If they start asking questions, I'll handle them for you. Leo listened with a smile, keeping one eye on his internal affinity meter. Affinity, 40 still not enough. He needed to push a little harder. How are you feeling now? Still unwell? Evelyn asked. Leo nodded slightly. Much better. Thank you, Professor Evelyn. That's good. Leo looked at her, his eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and maybe something more. Then, he broke into a radiant smile. I'm so glad you're my professor. If it were anyone else, I don't know what I would have done. You're the best, Professor Evelyn. The sunlight filtering into the office was soft and warm. Staring at the young man's smile, Evelyn seemed momentarily lost. It was a rare kind of smile, one that seemed to gather all the afternoon light onto his face. Faintly, Leo thought he heard her breath catch. A moment later, realizing she'd lost her composure in front of a student, Evelyn quickly looked away. Well, of course your professor is the best, she joked, trying to recover. You little rascal, are you trying to butter me up? No chance. I'm very strict. I won't hesitate to fail you if you don't keep up. Leo feigned a dramatic wail. Oh no, after 4 years away from school, I'm already at the bottom of the class. Professor, you have no idea how hard I've been studying, pulling all-nighters just to get on the same page as everyone else. Oh, stop it, Evelyn said, rolling her eyes, though a smile played on her lips. I've seen your file. You were an excellent student 4 years ago. There's no way you can't catch up. Leo just grinned. The playful banter had eased the tension. The slightly awkward air was gone, and Evelyn could finally face him again without feeling flustered. She began organizing the papers Leo had filled out. Don't thank me for anything. This is just part of my job. A professor's greatest satisfaction comes from seeing a hard-working student like you. I'm very proud of your dedication. Now, if there's nothing else, you should head home. I don't want to keep you from your rest. It sounded like she was kicking him out, but she continued to chat with him for several more minutes, showing no real sign of wanting him to leave immediately. Leo felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in a long time. The pain of being stabbed through the chest, the endless cycles of death and rewinding, the near despair Helena had caused him. It all felt like a distant memory. The nerves that had been stretched taut for so long finally began to slacken. Leo looked at Evelyn with a smile that, for the first time, was completely genuine. Evelyn affinity. 54 character affinity has surpassed 50. System reward has been issued. Please check your inventory. Suppressing a surge of excitement, Leo waved goodbye to his professor. Just as he reached the door, he stopped, as if remembering something. Oh, Professor Evelyn, one more thing. What is it? She asked, looking up. Leo glanced around at the bookshelves, finally asking the question that had been on his mind. Professor, do you know magic? Magic? Evelyn asked, puzzled. Why do you ask? Well, Leo quickly improvised. I've always been fascinated by it. Unfortunately, I don't have the aptitude, so I had to settle for studying arcane engineering. Magic and arcane engineering. One word difference, but they were two entirely different worlds. Graduates from his major were destined to be glorified technicians, cogs in the great machine of the arcano-industrial complex. But if he could find someone who could wield true magic, his current crisis might not be so hopeless. Unfortunately, Evelyn shook her head. I don't know magic. Oh, I see. Seeing the disappointment on Leo's face, her tone suddenly shifted, becoming uncharacteristically stern. Magic isn't something beautiful, Leo. It brings madness and ruin. Anyone touched by it is cursed with misfortune. She warned him, "Don't think I'm being dramatic. Listen to me, Leo. Do not try to get involved with magic." "Okay, Professor." Though he wasn't entirely convinced, her firm denial left him no room to press further. With a hint of disappointment, he gently closed the office door behind him. He might not have learned anything about magic, but the visit to her office had been incredibly fruitful. Leo eagerly checked his rewards. "You have received a skill voucher. Please choose one from the random skill pool." 1. Skill: Firearms Handling, Novice 2. Skill: Flash of Insight, Adept 3. Skill: Negotiate/Soothe, Master. The option surprised him. He hadn't expected an affinity reward to be this useful. Was the damn system finally showing some mercy? All three choices were tempting. Firearms Handling: Novice grants basic knowledge of firearms. Marksmanship is equivalent to an amateur enthusiast. Requires Strength 30, Constitution 30. Flash of Insight: Adept temporarily boosts insight. Significantly enhances perception of mystic phenomena. Requires Insight 50. Negotiate/Soothe: Master grants deep psychological perception and the ability to calm emotions, causing targets to lower their guard. Can suppress 20 points of corruption per use. Cooldown: 24H. Requires Charisma 80. Leo quickly assessed them. The first two could improve his chances of survival and investigation. However, amateur enthusiast level marksmanship was pretty weak. He'd been to a shooting range before. As for a Flash of Insight, he couldn't even redeem it. Leo's sterling race, human stats, strength, 32, constitution, 25, dexterity, 38, charisma, 100, insight, 49, sanity, 45. That left the best choice. The final skill, negotiate/soothe. It was a master-level ability, and the description sounded incredibly powerful. It could be used without the target's awareness, and its ability to calm emotions and lower corruption was exactly what he needed for Helena. It was far more effective than the low-grade suppression potions. Without a moment's hesitation, Leo selected the third skill. Negotiate/soothe, master. Redeemed after claiming his reward. Leo's mood lifted immensely. Between the pleasant conversation with Professor Evelyn and the powerful new skill, the trip had been a resounding success. His decision to go to her office had been the right one. But as he made his way back down the hall, his good mood vanished. Helena was there. "Brother." She stood in the middle of the hallway, her gaze flicking suspiciously toward the office he'd just left. "What took you so long?" Looking at Helena, Leo forced a gentle smile. "I thought I told you to wait for me in the classroom. What are you doing out here?" Everyone in the classroom. Helena lowered her head. They were too friendly. "I don't like it. I want to be with you, Leo." Leo ruffled her hair. "That's just because you're so cute. People are naturally drawn to you." Helena looked up hesitantly. "Are you finished with your business?" "All done." "Oh." Her blue eyes were full of curiosity. "That Professor Evelyn, is she very beautiful?" A knot of dread tightened in Leo's stomach. The last thing he wanted was to drag the kind professor into this mess. He kept his expression neutral. "Why do you ask? Who told you that?" "Well, I heard your classmates talking. They all said Professor Evelyn is beautiful. Just a little strict." Her words caught Leo off guard. Strict? He thought back to his experience in her office. In no way did Professor Evelyn seem strict. Though puzzled, he didn't let it show, instead seizing the opportunity. "Yeah, strict is an understatement. She's harsh at the total hard ass. I never want to set foot in that office again." "Oh, really?" "Totally. It's like she's wound way too tight," Leo said, putting on a look of disgust. "I see." A visible wave of relief washed over Helena, and a smile returned to her face. "Then let's go home, Leo." Leo let out a silent sigh of relief himself. As long as Professor Evelyn wasn't implicated, it was fine. He was sure she wouldn't mind him bad-mouthing her a little if it kept her safe. Hand in hand, they walked down the hallway, laughing and talking. But just as they turned the corner, Helena glanced back. Her gaze lingered on the office door, a thoughtful, calculating look in her eyes. On the way home, Helena asked him again if he could stop going to school and just stay home with her. The answer, of course, was yes. After 3 resets, he had learned her triggers perfectly. He didn't provoke her. He just placidly agreed. His compliance was practiced in a way that was heartbreaking. As a result, Helena was in an exceptionally good mood. She linked her arm through his, her face beaming with joy, and even started humming a little tune. "You're the best, Leo." And this time, Because he had pleased her, she didn't exhibit that near-psychotic possessiveness. She didn't try to cuff him like a prisoner. "I'm going out to buy groceries," Helena announced, waving cheerfully at him. "I've been practicing my cooking for the last 4 years, you know? You be a good boy and wait for me at home, okay? Be safe. Hurry back," Leo said, the words feeling hollow. "Don't worry about me." He watched her close the door. He counted silently in his head for over a minute. Once he was sure she was truly gone, Leo bolted up the stairs, his every second precious. Hurry back? No way. He was hoping she'd get into a fist fight with the cashier. Stability suppression potion ×1. Brewing. In a previous loop, this potion hadn't done much, but it was always better to have an extra card up his sleeve. Leo glanced nervously at the front door, praying Helena would take her time. 1 second. 2:30. Brewing complete. The house remained quiet. Leo sighed in relief and quickly shoved the glass vial into his pocket. But after a moment's thought, he decided that wasn't safe enough. He went out into the hallway, looked around, and hid the potion inside a tall vase by the front door. Only then did he feel secure enough to go back downstairs. So far, everything was going perfectly. So perfectly, in fact, that it felt unreal. He couldn't help it. After dying so many times at Helena's unpredictable hands, he was terrified. Night fell. When Helena returned, she prepared a lavish, exquisite meal for him. The candlelight flickered, casting a quiet, warm glow over the dining room. But Leo's heart began to hammer in his chest. It was the death dinner all over again. Whether he'd live to see the sunrise depended entirely on tonight. "Leo, come and try what I made." Seeing the eager anticipation in her eyes, Leo smiled and swallowed the bite of food she offered him. "Wow." He widened his eyes in surprise. "This is delicious." That part wasn't a lie. Helena actually had a talent for cooking. It was just that last time, he'd been so consumed by anxiety that everything had tasted like ash. "Really? Is it really that good?" Helena's eyes seemed to light up. "It's true," Leo nodded. "Would I lie to you?" "You'd better not lie to me," she said with a happy smile, eagerly pushing other dishes toward him. "Otherwise, I'll get very angry." Leo knew she hated wasting food, so he pretended to have a huge appetite and dug in. Helena propped her chin on her hands, watching him eat with rapt attention, her eyes curving into beautiful crescent moons. She seemed to derive more satisfaction from watching him eat than from eating herself. The peaceful atmosphere continued. Until... "Leo, what is it?" Helena glanced around the large, empty dining table at the silent house around them. A thought seemed to strike her, and her expression grew complex. She said softly, "It used to be so lively, with all of us sitting around the table together. It feels so empty now. Do you miss the old days, Leo?" Here it comes. Leo's heart leaped into his throat. This was the kill question. One wrong answer, and everything he'd worked for would be undone. Leo's gaze slowly moved to Helena. In her current state, she was sensitive, volatile, and emotionally unstable. She despised him having contact with any other woman, viewing them as enemies. She had a particularly undisguised hatred for the other heroines from his first playthrough. So this question was a test. She wasn't genuinely reminiscing. "To be honest, I do miss it a little bit," Leo said, his first sentence unexpectedly agreeing with her. As he expected, he caught a flicker in his peripheral vision. Helena's arms, resting on the table, gave an involuntary twitch. The candlelight wavered, and the room grew colder. "Corruption, 85. Is that so?" Helena lowered her head slightly, hiding her eyes. Her voice dropped to a low murmur. "So, you're still thinking about them. Am I not good enough for you, Leo?" Leo smiled gently and reached out to stroke her hair. Negotiate/soothe, master. Activate. In that instant, as he looked at Helena, it felt as if he could see straight through her dejected facade, right into her heart. It was only when her defenses were down that she was truly vulnerable. The game was on. The night deepened. The candlelight flickered across Helena's small face, but this time, she just sat there quietly. Leo was astonished. Previously, any hint of nostalgia for the past would have sent her into an immediate rage. She would have put 2 new holes in his chest and sent him straight to a game-over screen. But now, under the influence of negotiate/soothe, her emotions were stable. She was actually listening to him. It was miraculous. With that thought, the tension in Leo's chest finally eased. He looked at Helena and said with a smile, "Who doesn't like a full house? Even I get lonely when I'm by myself." Lonely. Helena whispered the word. It was a familiar feeling for her. Before she met him, she had always been alone. Hiding, scurrying through the shadows, a monster no one cared about. Everyone was afraid of her. "Do you remember the first time we met?" Leo asked. Helena nodded. You were curled up in that little alley. Crows and stray dogs were circling. You said, I'm so hungry. Recalling the memory, Helena's eyes shimmered. You still remember that day? Of course I do. Leo ruffled her hair. That was the first time I ever saw you, Helena. It was a day worth remembering. Hearing how clearly he remembered their first meeting, Helena finally smiled. It seemed he really did care about her. She drifted back into the past. Back then, I had just gotten into a fight with the agents who were hunting me. I killed them all. But afterward, I was so tired I couldn't even move. New Haven is so cold in the winter. Every time she thought of it, she could feel that bone-deep chill and the hunger. Her mind drifted further back to the time before she met him. She was very, very young when she discovered her abilities. When those strange tentacles first appeared, she was terrified. She didn't want anyone to find out how strange she was. But she couldn't control them. Whenever she was upset, the infuriating tentacles would burst forth and destroy everything around her. One day, her family saw her. She couldn't remember their faces anymore, but she would never forget the looks of terror and disgust they wore. Monster! It's a monster! They abandoned her. That word, monster, was burned into her heart. She hated monsters because she hated what she was. That was the first time she was left on the streets. Thankfully, the church orphanage took her in. The nuns were all so kind. She loved it there because she no longer had to fight stray dogs for scraps of food. She worked hard, thinking that if she was devout enough, if she learned all the incomprehensible lessons, she could stay and become a nun herself. She would never have to worry about food again. She was so careful, so terrified every day of her ability being discovered. But she failed. Helena vaguely remembered a day when one of the nuns gave her a dirty, slightly torn, stuffed animal. This is for you. I think all little girls like fluffy toys. It was a big bear, soft and worn a hug. Helena was overjoyed. It was the first time she'd ever had a toy. Did all the girls in New Haven have toys like this? Those are probably clean and beautiful. She was so envious. But someone stole her toy and ripped it apart. The warm, cuddly bear ended up looking like one of the stray dogs she'd torn apart, its stuffing spilling out like entrails. How could other children be so cruel? Didn't they feel any guilt? She never got along with the other kids at the orphanage. There was one tall boy who always had a group of followers, and they all hated her. But for the sake of a warm meal, Helena endured it. Until the day her bear was destroyed. She couldn't control herself anymore. She lashed out. The sound of children screaming, the look of terror in the nun's eyes, the incessant, grating wail of sirens. She escaped the encirclement, her tentacles severed, her body covered in sticky, filthy blood. The cold and the hunger returned. They hunted her relentlessly. Helena thought she would spend the rest of her life hiding in alleys and fighting dogs for food, right up until the very end. Until that day, a very kind older boy walked up to her. He touched her forehead and handed her a piece of warm food. To this day, she could still remember it perfectly. It was a piece of freshly baked rye bread. It wasn't hard at all. It was soft and warm. It was the most delicious thing she had ever eaten. Leo. Helena looked at the man before her, an unusual light shining in her eyes. He was like a beam of light in the darkness, illuminating her pathetic existence. After that day, he took her home. She finally had a warm bed and hot food. And she had a family. Her only family. At that thought, Helena clung to Leo's arm, burying her face in his chest. If only things could stay like this forever. Just the two of them, together with the person she loved most. Forever. Helena. Leo looked down at the small girl in his arms. She was curled up, her eyes closed, her long lashes fluttering like a butterfly's wings. She looked like any other insecure girl. He was surprised by the change in her. Since he'd returned to this world, she had never once been this docile. It was as if they were back in the old days. Corruption, 65. Seeing the notification on his screen, Leo suppressed a surge of excitement. Negotiate/soothe was basically a charm spell. Of course, he knew exactly what had caused the shift. He had deliberately steered the conversation toward her past, hoping to get her to open up. He hadn't expected it to lower her defenses so completely. This was a very good sign. Leo gently stroked Helena's soft hair, but his gaze grew colder, deeper. After dying so many times, how could he ever feel anything real for her? He trusted only himself and the mission, containment. Negotiate/soothe had a 24-hour cooldown. All he had to do was wait until this time tomorrow and use it again. What are you smiling at, Leo? Helena's eyes fluttered open, her lake blue gaze filled with confusion. I'm smiling at. Leo gently booped her nose. You sleepyhead. If you're tired, you should go to bed. Why are you curled up in my lap? He scooped her up in a princess carry. Go get some sleep. I'll clean up the dining room. Helena beamed, her eyes curving into crescents. You're the best, Leo. She wrapped her arms tightly around his neck, letting him carry her back to her room. Late at night, Leo forced his eyes open, stifling a yawn as he returned to his own room. In the dim moonlight, he glanced at the wall clock. 12:06 a.m. He had spent the entire day playing along with Helena, his brain running at full speed. He was utterly exhausted, but seeing the time, he couldn't suppress a jolt of exhilaration. I fucking survived the day. Finally, I'll get to see the sun rise again. Even though it was pitch black outside, Leo felt as if he could already see the dawn. The feeling lasted only a moment before he reined it in. Be careful. You have to be careful. Just until tomorrow. Filled with hope for the next day, Leo lay down on his bed. He was so tired that he fell asleep almost instantly. The New Haven night was cool. Leo tossed and turned, sleeping restlessly. In his dreams, he saw himself being killed by Helena over and over again. Then he dreamed she was sitting by his bed, watching him with a cold, unnerving stare. Leo shot awake, drenched in sweat, as if he'd been pulled from a river. You dream what you think about during the day, he thought with a wry, weary smile, looking around the pitch-black room. Helena had really gotten into his head. As Leo closed his eyes, ready to fall back asleep, he felt a strange sensation. It was the feeling of being watched by something in the darkness. It made the hair on his arms stand on end. Leo lifted his head, squinting, his eyes struggling to adjust to the darkness. And then he saw it. There was someone else in his room. His eyes flew wide open in terror. In the darkness, a pair of eerie blue eyes was staring at him, unblinking. The atmosphere turned instantly terrifying. Helena. He scrambled to light the gas lamp on his nightstand. As the warm light flared to life, he saw Helena sitting in the chair at his desk. She was as still as a statue, just watching him. Did you not sleep well, Leo? Why do you look so scared to see me? Are you afraid of me, Leo? A strange, unsettling smile spread across her face. The air in the room was frigid. Whether it was from a night chill or the palpable killing intent, Leo couldn't tell. He immediately wiped the terrified look from his face and forced a smile. Why are you still up so late? What are you doing in my room? He feigned calm as he walked over and placed a hand on her forehead. Can't sleep? Is something on your mind? He rubbed his temples and started to turn away. I'll go get you a glass of hot water. But in a flash, Helena's figure vanished and reappeared in front of him, blocking his path. She tilted her head, a slight smile on her lips. You always like to change the subject, don't you, Leo? Leo feigned confusion. Helena narrowed her eyes, studying him. They say a person's first reaction never lies. The moment you saw me, you looked terrified. Are you afraid of me, Leo? Her voice dropped to a whisper. And if you're so afraid of me, does that mean everything you've shown me before was just an act? Were you lying to me, Leo? Leo's heart pounded, but his expression remained unchanged. He let out a short laugh and patted her shoulder. What are you thinking? Why would I be afraid of you? Anyone would jump if they saw a shadowy figure lurking in their room in the middle of the night. And first reaction, he gave her an exasperated look. If I had a gun by the bed, my first reaction would be to empty the clip at whatever was in front of me, no questions asked. After his explanation, he saw the suspicion in her eyes finally begin to fade. Is that so? She muttered to herself, looking down. Maybe I'm just being too sensitive. I'm sorry, Leo. It's okay, Leo said with a gentle smile. He thought he had finally placated her and was about to breathe a sigh of relief when he felt a strange tremor under his hand. Then, Helena's shoulders and arms began to twist unnervingly. A slick, serpentine sound slithered through the quiet room. Helena transformed. 5 or 6 terrifying tentacles erupted into view. Helena, you! Before Leo could react, 2 tentacles shot out and wrapped around his body. They slithered under his pajama shirt, their cool, smooth surface making his skin crawl. A wave of goosebumps erupted across his arms. Helena, what are you doing? He asked, his voice strained. Don't scare me like this. But Helena's eyes held none of their usual murderous intent. She just watched him silently as her tentacles coiled around his body, his arms, his legs, his waist, and his vulnerable neck, as if intending to cocoon him completely. This is what I really look like, Leo. Are you afraid of me now? She asked softly. Leo could barely move. The tentacle around his neck made it hard to speak. Of course not. This is the real you, Helena. Why would I be afraid? A sweet smile returned to her face. So you like me like this? Of course. Leo's mind raced. If negotiate/soothe were active, he would have told her the truth, that he hated it, and ordered her to let him go, maybe even make her feel guilty. But now was not the time. "Of course I do," he said with a smile. "I love you, Helena. It doesn't matter what you look like. I'll always love you." Helena's smile widened, and her whole body trembled with excitement. "You like me, Leo, even though I'm a monster. You don't despise me. This is wonderful. A monster, a monster, a monster. Wait, I'm a monster. Monster." Leo hadn't said another word, but she was already descending into the same maddening, repetitive whispers as before. Lost in her own world, Helena didn't notice the color draining from Leo's face. "Cough. Act." He weakly slapped at the tentacle around his neck. Helena finally noticed his distress. His face was turning purple, and his eyes were rolling back in his head. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Leo." She immediately released her grip, and Leo's body crumpled to the floor, only to be caught by another gentle tentacle. "I'm sorry. I've been like this a lot lately," she said with a guilty smile. "Sometimes I can't control my emotions. I'm sorry, it's just because I love you so much, Leo." Looking at Leo, whose face was now deathly pale, a strange light flickered in Helena's eyes. He was so good to her. Sometimes she couldn't resist the urge to break him, a frightening impulse for mutual destruction that terrified even her. Maybe it was because she felt so worthless. She was so scared that those other women would steal him away again, scared of losing him. Sometimes she thought there was only one way to be with him forever. Helena lowered her head, fighting to control her emotions, to hide the darkness in her eyes. "Leo loves me. He isn't disgusted by what I am. He wasn't lying, so I can't do that to him." Meanwhile, Leo threw open a window, gulping down fresh air. He went and poured himself a glass of water, finally feeling his senses return. That was terrifying. He knew it. Helena hadn't changed at all. The docile, normal-looking girl from dinner was a complete facade. Any lingering hope Leo had cherished was now utterly extinguished. "Yes, what I'm doing is right. I will never, ever love her." "Are you feeling better, Leo?" Clear, lake-blue eyes watched him with concern. Helena was now sitting on his bed, looking as serene and well-behaved as ever. If you ignored the monstrous tentacles writhing behind her. The face of an angel, the body of a monster. The combination was profoundly unsettling. "I'm better. I'm fine," Leo said, adjusting his robe. He let out a heavy yawn, feigning exhaustion. "It's getting late. I'm going to sleep. You should go back to your room, Helena." He walked over to the bed, ready to usher her out. To his dismay, Helena didn't move an inch. "I can't sleep. I want to sleep with you, Leo." What?" Leo blinked, confused. Helena looked at him with wide, pleading blue eyes. "Are you going to say no?" Leo realized she was serious. He sank down onto the plush pillows with a sigh and patted the empty space beside him. "Like I have a choice." That part was the absolute truth. He was terrified of dying. "Yay," Helena chirped, bouncing onto the soft mattress like an excited child. She ignored the spot he'd indicated and instead wrapped herself around his waist, resting her head on his chest and closing her eyes contentedly. Looking at her peaceful sleeping face, Leo sighed and turned off the lamp. The room was plunged into darkness again. But Leo couldn't sleep. Not at all. He knew Helena had let her guard down, that she probably wouldn't try to kill him in his sleep, and her small body was warm and surprisingly comfortable to hold. But she was hugging his waist, with 6 tentacles. Who the hell could sleep being cuddled by 6 tentacles? Overwhelmed and utterly exasperated, Leo closed his eyes. The next morning, Leo opened his eyes, 2 enormous dark circles under them. The space beside him was empty. Helena was gone. He yawned, feeling utterly drained. The night had been indescribable, cuddling with the very same tentacles that had killed him before. To say he was on edge would be an understatement. It had been an agonizing ordeal. On top of that, Helena was a restless sleeper. Her tentacles moved against him all night, sometimes sprouting barbs or hard scales depending on what she was dreaming about. Leo rubbed at the red, irritated marks on his skin and sighed. He opened his bedroom door and headed for the bathroom. After washing up, a delicious aroma wafted through the house. Perhaps because he hadn't slept, his stomach was growling ferociously. He followed the scent to the dining room. "You're awake, Leo." Helena, wearing an apron, poked her head out from the kitchen. A series of clangs and bangs echoed from behind her. "I'm up," he said. "Are you making breakfast?" Why was it making so much noise? He walked around the long dining table and into the kitchen, where he finally understood. One of Helena's tentacles was holding a frying pan. Another was cracking eggs. 2 more were on the cutting board, slicing sausage. And that wasn't all. In the corner of the kitchen, her remaining 2 tentacles were busy with the toaster. With a ding, a perfectly browned, steaming slice of toast popped up. Watching Helena work with all 6 hands at once, a model of multitasking efficiency, Leo suddenly found that the tentacles weren't quite as terrifying anymore. Who would have thought that the same grotesque appendages that had skewered him a few days ago would now be expertly sprinkling seasoning on a sandwich? The whole scene was bizarre. "Tada!" Helena winked playfully as she set a beautiful, heart-shaped breakfast on the table in front of him. Leo looked at her expectant face, picked up his fork, and took a bite of the fried egg. The texture was perfect, the yolk was cooked just right, not runny but not hard either. She'd added ketchup and a dash of black pepper. He gave her a thumbs up without speaking and devoured the rest of the egg in one go. Then, without missing a beat, he picked up a bacon and vegetable sandwich and took a huge, hungry bite. The morning sun streamed through the window, its warm light falling on their faces. Helena sat beside him, her chin resting on her hands, quietly watching him eat. It was the perfect morning, even in these simple, mundane moments of daily life. Just having him here made her feel happy. She wished every day could be like this. Helena's gaze on him became distant, lost in thought. All done. Leo finished everything on his plate and gulped down his milk. He let out a satisfied burp and looked at Helena. "Why are you spacing out? Aren't you hungry?" He speared a piece of egg with his fork and held it up to her mouth. "Open up." The smell of the egg brought Helena back to her senses. She giggled happily and bit down on the fork. "Oof, it's too big. I missed." She'd only managed a small bite, and the rest of the egg fell to the floor. "You little klutz," Leo said with a mock-scolding look. "Now you've wasted it. What were you thinking about?" A tentacle deftly picked up the fallen egg from the floor. Helena's smile was a perfect crescent moon. "I was thinking about happy things. Things about you." "Oh, really? Guess what they were?" Let me guess. Something to do with lunch." "What?" Helena pouted. "Is food all you think about, Leo?" "Ha! Was I wrong?" Leo scratched the back of his head. "From the look on your face, I thought you were pondering one of life's 3 great philosophical questions. What are we having for lunch?" "Guess not, huh?" The girl gave him an exaggerated eye roll. His joke was terrible, but she couldn't help but crack a smile. Her laugh was like blooming flowers. She grabbed his arm and shook it playfully. "Come on, guess again." "I can't guess." "Try. Please try." On a warm, sunny morning, in a spacious house, the siblings' laughter filled the air, just like any other happy family's breakfast. But beneath Leo's gentle smile, his mind was calculating. Everything was proceeding smoothly. After an incredible display of patience, Helena's condition was stabilizing. Tonight, his skills cooldown would reset. A forced containment tonight would still be risky. He might need the suppression potion he'd hidden upstairs. But Helena wouldn't go down without a fight. There would be a battle. Leo wanted to avoid a battle. If he didn't act rashly and waited one more day, the containment would be much safer. By the 3rd day, his success rate would be virtually 100%. Leo weighed the 2 options, his eyes falling on the happily smiling girl before him, and on her tentacles spread out around her. They seemed harmless now, but he knew that in an instant, they could pierce his chest or skull. They were impossibly fast, with a terrifyingly long reach. He could not let his guard down, so he would wait and see. He'd reevaluate her condition tonight. For the sake of his own life, he had all the patience in the world. In the following days, Leo hardly ever left Helena's sight, dedicating himself to keeping her company at home. Her state improved dramatically. She started to seem, for all intents and purposes, like a normal girl her age. More importantly, after 2 days of his constant presence, Helena had come to believe he wasn't lying to her. "He's really not going back to school. He's willing to stay home with me." This meant she no longer had to worry about someone stealing him away. But Helena looked at Leo with a pang of guilt. Whenever she saw a fleeting look of sadness or boredom on his face, her self-recrimination intensified. A person like him wasn't meant to be kept in a cage. He used to be so amazing, investigating cases, traveling, meeting important people. A free spirit walking in the shadows of the world. Maybe what I'm doing is wrong. Helena secretly studied Leo. If he was getting too bored, she thought, maybe she could find something for him to do. Maybe, if he was good, she could even let him go out sometimes. Leo, however, was oblivious to her thoughts. He only felt the faint, probing sense of being watched. The progress over the last 2 days had been so smooth, it felt unreal. Helena was even willing to let him have some yard time now. He could leave the house, walk around the neighborhood. But he was certain that if he did, she would be following him secretly. It was still early. The operation wouldn't begin until 11 tonight. Leo did plan to go out for a bit. He wanted to buy Helena a stuffed animal. He vaguely remembered that she liked them, a detail from an old in-game text file he'd almost forgotten. He'd been too busy playing the game like a detective novel to pay attention, treating her as just another tool. It wasn't too late to fix that. He didn't know why she liked them, but if having something she cherished made her more stable, it was a sound tactical investment, purely a cost-benefit analysis. With a smile, Leo changed his clothes and called out to Helena. I'm heading out for a bit to buy something. I'll be right back. Okay, Leo. Helena was on the sofa, reading a book. She responded naturally, without a hint of suspicion. The moment he turned his back, however, she lowered the magazine and her eyes followed him. Leo walked to the entryway and picked up his jacket. Just as he was about to put on his shoes, a knock echoed through the house. For some reason, the unhurried sound made Leo's heart hammer in his chest. A deep sense of foreboding washed over him. Leo, Helena appeared silently behind him, making him jump. Who is it? How should I know? He said, meeting her puzzled gaze. Who would be looking for them at this time, in such a secluded place? The knocking continued, steady and persistent, as if the person on the other side wouldn't leave until the door was opened. Helena glanced at Leo, seemingly accepting his answer, then walked to the door. Stop knocking. Who is this? The knocking stopped abruptly. Then, a voice Leo found vaguely familiar drifted through the door. Hello, you must be Leo's sister. I'm his professor, Evelyn. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm here for a home visit. He's been absent for 2 days straight. The absences are one thing, but I'm worried about his health. The voice outside was warm and magnetic. It was the kind of voice that made you picture a beautiful person without even seeing them. Professor Evelyn? What's she doing here? This is the worst possible timing. Leo's stomach clenched. He quickly looked at Helena. Her face was a blank mask. Your professor seems to care a lot about you, Leo, she said, her voice low, as if she were suppressing something. The smiling, happy Helena of the past 2 days had vanished. Well, she's a very responsible professor, Leo explained quickly. She's like this with all her students, not just me. Helena's voice was flat, hollow. Didn't you say she was a hard ass? That she was wound way too tight? Leo felt a flush of awkwardness. Well, people are complicated. Oh, is that so? Her ice blue eyes stared at him, devoid of any emotion. Leo, that's a rather intimate way to address you. I've never heard anyone call you that before. Leo's smile became even more strained. How was he supposed to know that's what she called her students? This was killing him. And Helena's gaze fell on his fresh clothes, her tone becoming dangerously suggestive. In such a hurry to go out. Did you and your dear Professor Evelyn have a little date planned? You've got it all wrong. Leo's face fell, a feeling of utter despair washing over him. How could he have known that just as Helena was stabilizing, just as everything was finally going right, Professor Evelyn would show up at this exact moment? Terrified that all his progress was about to be undone, he threw caution to the wind and grabbed Helena's small shoulders. Helena, listen to me, it's not what you think. Helena gently brushed his hands away. Her tentacles had already retracted back into her arms. There's no need to explain, Leo. She stared at him, her eyes deep and unreadable. We'll find out the truth soon enough. All we have to do is invite your dear professor inside. Her voice was calm as she walked to the door and turned the handle. The door swung open. Professor Evelyn, carrying a handbag and wearing a stylish sun hat, came face to face with Helena. Hello there. You must be Leo's sister. I've heard some of the students mention you, Professor Evelyn said with a kind smile. When she saw Leo behind Helena, she waved warmly. Leo. She looked him over, her expression tinged with worry. Are you sick again? You look quite pale. Leo looked back at her helplessly. Of course I look pale. You have no idea. Wow, you're so young and beautiful, Professor Evelyn. Helena chirped, her tone deceptively playful. From the way my brother talked about you, I thought you'd be in your 40s or 50s. Excuse me. Evelyn's brow furrowed, and she shot an annoyed look at Leo. I'm not that old. What have you been telling your sister about me, young man? She was clearly offended. No woman likes to be called old, even though Leo had never said anything of the sort. But just as Evelyn was about to scold him, she noticed he was making frantic faces at her, desperately mouthing something. Her frown deepened. What got into him? It looks like he's trying to tell me something. How strange. Leo, Helena's voice cut in, as if she had eyes in the back of her head. She turned, her smile not reaching her eyes. Is there something you want to say to Professor Evelyn in private? No, Leo said, his expression flat. Oh, really? Helena stared into his eyes, as if trying to read his soul. Well, if you have something to say to your professor. Her smile turned chilling. Then we should invite her in. The two of you can sit in the living room and have a nice, long chat. Like flipping a switch, she turned back to Evelyn, her mask of politeness firmly back in place. Please come in, Professor Evelyn. Well, thank you. I hope I'm not intruding. Evelyn was ushered inside. As the heavy door clicked shut behind them, Leo shot a glance at the oblivious professor and sighed internally. He never would have guessed she would be this concerned about him. It was too late to get her out now. Helena would never let her leave. His heart pounded with dread, wondering how this seemingly normal home visit would spiral into a nightmare. How is Leo's health? Oh, thank you, Evelyn said, accepting a cup of tea from Helena as she sat on the sofa. My health. Leo shook his head with a sigh. Not good. I don't think I can come to school for the next few days, Professor. Is that so? Evelyn turned to Helena, looking confused. Why didn't you have your sister come to the school and file for a medical leave? Unexcused absences will affect your grades and could delay your graduation. I really couldn't, Professor, Leo said, the words painfully true. The last couple of days, I haven't been able to leave the house. Was it that serious? Evelyn's brow furrowed. If that's the case, you might not be able to continue your studies. The administration won't be lenient forever. In that case, I'll just drop out, Leo declared, his gaze serious. What? Evelyn stared at him, shocked. But I thought you loved learning, that you were passionate about school. Professor Evelyn, Leo said, looking her straight in the eye. I'm sorry. I was lying to you before. The truth is, I don't care about studying at all. When I see a book, I want to rip it to shreds. When I see the school, I want to blow it up. Being stuck in a classroom all day would drive me insane. I hate school. Leo, Evelyn's eyes went wide. Her face flushed with anger. She had skipped one of her own classes and traveled all this way just to check on a promising student, only to hear this? How could he betray her concern like this? He was infuriating. Seeing her anger, Leo silently apologized in his head, but he maintained the disrespectful, delinquent facade. That's how it is, Professor. If there's nothing else, you should probably go. Goodbye, and hopefully not see you again. He stood up and looked toward the entryway, rudely gesturing for her to leave. Leo, Evelyn shot to her feet, furious. Leo, Helena's soft voice cut through the tense silence. She took his arm and pulled him back down onto the sofa. Is that any way to speak to your professor? She came all this way out of concern for you. Helena watched him, her eyes narrowing into a smile that didn't reach them. The blue of her irises darkened, as if she could see right through his act. Leo's blood ran cold. Professor Evelyn. He started, about to say something more, but Helena didn't give him the chance. Her small frame held a surprising strength, pinning him to the sofa. A dangerous, chilling aura emanated from her, enveloping him. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Finally, he sighed in defeat. It was over. He gave up trying to save her. Helena turned back to Evelyn, a serene smile on her face. Professor, please don't be angry. She noticed the teacup was empty and graciously refilled it. My brother isn't usually like this. It must be the illness. It's made his personality change so drastically. Please don't take what he said to heart. Is that so? Evelyn glanced at Leo. He just stared back at her, silent. Evelyn let out a self-deprecating laugh. From the way he was acting, it didn't seem like he was lying. I think I wasn't being perfectly honest. She sighed deeply. And here I thought I'd found another promising student. Her eyes were filled with disappointment. It seems you're very fond of my brother, Professor, Helena said quietly. Evelyn didn't catch the undertone in her voice and just scoffed. And I've completely wasted my affection. It seems everything he said that day was a lie. I guess I was a poor judge of character. I'll let you two talk. I have matters to attend to at the school. She stood up abruptly, clearly eager to leave. But Helena moved to block her path. You. Evelyn frowned, unsure what she was doing. Helena's smile grew wider, deeper. As I said, my brother actually loves to study. And he's very fond of you, Professor Evelyn. So, Helena's smile twisted. Since my brother likes you so much, and you like him so much, why don't you stay? Stay. Evelyn looked at the girl, bewildered. What do you mean, stay? Exactly that, Helena chirped. Why don't you stay here forever, Professor Evelyn? What are you talking about? Evelyn's expression grew more concerned. She began to wonder if Leo's sister was also sick in the head. The girl's smile was sinister, unnatural. It was chilling. Evelyn took an involuntary step back, a sharp sense of danger finally cutting through her confusion. The atmosphere in the house had felt off from the very beginning. The strange dynamic between the siblings, the subtle, underlying chill. Suddenly, she remembered the message Leo had been so desperately trying to send her. Run! A look of horror crossed Evelyn's face. She shoved Helena aside and bolted for the front door. But she only made it a few steps before a sickening thud echoed through the room, and her body collapsed to the floor. Behind her, Helena's mocking laughter filled the air. Finally got rid of the nasty woman who wanted to steal my brother. Hee hee hee. Leo stared at Professor Evelyn's body on the floor, her life status unknown. It must have been the tea. Helena had poisoned it. Not a single suspicious move. She had planned to kill her from the very beginning. An icy coldness spread through Leo's heart. Then, Helena turned around. Her entire body was trembling with an ecstatic, feverish excitement. The smile on her face was manic. And now it's your turn, brother. Her arms morphed into a writhing mass of tentacles, and a powerful wave of psychic energy radiated outward. Are you going to kill me? Leo asked calmly. You don't seem scared at all. Helena tilted her head, curious. Maybe I'm just used to dying, Leo said, leaning back against the sofa, trying to find a more comfortable position. There you go again, saying those strange things. I'm telling the truth, Leo said, a small smile on his face. One of Helena's tentacles shot out and wrapped around his neck. A sharp barb slowly extended from its tip, poised to pierce his throat and end his life in an instant. Leo just watched her, his expression unchanged. She didn't move. You were willing to stay home with me. And that made me so happy, she purred. But you haven't changed at all, have you, Leo? You're still such a flirt. The moment I take my eyes off you, you go chasing after other women. That stupid professor, huh? I knew she had ideas about you. I was right. You lied to me again. Helena glided closer, her smile becoming more unreadable. So now, I'm going to have to fix you, brother. Why don't you take a little nap first? You are under intense psychic assault. Performing sanity check. Sanity check failed. Sanity dash, 10 the world went black, and Leo slumped unconscious on the sofa. When he came to, Leo found himself strapped tightly to a chair. His hands and feet were bound with thick leather straps, and a straitjacket was cinched over his clothes. He could barely move anything but his head. Ugh, my head is killing me, he hissed. A dull, throbbing pain echoed deep inside his skull, a lingering aftereffect of the psychic assault. If his sanity score weren't reasonably high, he never would have withstood it. A normal person would have been driven irrevocably mad. Leo gritted his teeth and surveyed his surroundings. The only light source was an old kerosene lamp, its weak flame casting long, dancing shadows across the cramped, musty room. It had to be the old house's basement. There were no windows, and the air was thick and stale, and it reeked of blood. He followed the scent with his eyes, his gaze landing on a dark corner of the room. Professor Evelyn's body lay there. A massive hole had been torn in her chest. Her internal organs were gone, replaced by a mangled, unrecognizable mess of flesh and gore. Helena had killed her in the most brutal way imaginable. Leo looked away, a wave of nausea rising in his throat. If Professor Evelyn had only been unconscious before, he couldn't imagine the agony of such a death. A cold, grim feeling settled over him. I'm next. Helena's last words echoed in his mind. I'm going to have to fix you. How? How is she going to fix him? His eyes darted to the other side of the room, where a long table was covered with an array of serrated knives, surgical tools, bandages, and bottles of medicine. The sight made his scalp prickle with terror. He wanted to die. He truly did. At least death was quick, and it meant he could reset. But he was completely immobilized. He couldn't even seek the mercy of a quick end. The restraints were too tight. No matter how hard he struggled, they didn't give an inch. This was a restraint chair made for psychotics, forged from solid metal. He'd used them on others before, on humans driven mad by otherworldly backlash. He never thought he'd end up in one himself. Escape was impossible. His only hope was to talk his way out. Leo glanced at his system panel. Negotiate/soothe, master, skill on cooldown. CD, 00:35:0, 3:30-5 minutes. Half an hour. That was his only chance. As he was thinking, the wooden basement door creaked open. Helena entered, holding a kerosene lamp, a serene smile on her face. Did you miss me, Leo? Helena Affinity, 100 corruption, 85 a twisted being, madly in love with you. Leo stared into her blue eyes, silent. Silence means yes, Helena chirped, stroking his cheek. You saw her, didn't you? The fate of that bitch. Leo remained impassive, refusing to look toward the body. Helena frowned. She gripped his chin, forcing his head to turn toward the corner. I want you to look at what happens to bitches who get in our way. He couldn't resist her strength, and was forced to look at the horrifying scene again. Evelyn's empty corpse. You look so sad, Leo. Are you mourning for your precious professor? Helena's smile turned to ice. She glared at the body with pure disgust. This is what happens to any woman who tries to take you from me. This is what I wanted you to see. Do you understand now, Leo? Her blue eyes bored into him, searching for a reaction. Leo's emotions were a tangled mess. When Evelyn first showed up, he had resented her for ruining his plans. But now, after she had paid with her life in such a horrific way, that resentment was gone. He could only blame himself for his own oversight. He should have handled the situation with the school better. The flicker of regret on his face was misinterpreted by Helena. She thought her lesson had finally sunk in. Her smile deepened. Since you understand your mistake, it's time. Let's begin your remodeling, brother. Trust me. After this, you'll never make the same mistake again. Leo's gaze shifted back to the increasingly excited Helena. What are you going to do to me? What is this remodeling? You'll see soon enough. She walked over to the long table, which looked more like a butcher's block. She carefully selected a tool from the collection, finally picking one up with a satisfied nod. Leo watched in horror. After choosing a wicked-looking bone saw, she began sterilizing it with alcohol and mixing a strange-smelling potion. He knew enough about alchemy to recognize it. An anesthetic, the kind used for surgery in this era. Don't be scared, Leo. I'll be very gentle, she cooed, her smile unnervingly sweet as she brought the potion over. Drink this, and you won't feel a thing. Aren't I thoughtful? Thoughtful? She had to be kidding. Leo's eyes were glued to her as she lovingly stroked his hand. Such a shame. You always used to stroke my hair so gently with these hands. Enjoy the feeling of having limbs while you can, brother. Soon, they won't be yours anymore. Leo stared at her in disbelief. He finally understood what she was planning. The small toothed saw wasn't just for show. It was for amputating limbs, for sawing through bone. You're insane. An absolute, raving lunatic. Being called a lunatic didn't faze her in the slightest. She looked at him with soft eyes. You won't be able to move anymore, but don't worry. I'll take good care of you. You still have so many places you want to see, right? I can push you in a wheelchair. We'll travel the world together. We can go to the gardens at our den castle. I hear they're beautiful, with endless fields of tulips. Then, I'll take you to the port of Brugge, the most famous trading hub in the empire. They have food from all over the world. We can go shopping every day and eat something new for a whole year. Oh, she was getting more and more excited. And you love studying all that mysterious stuff, right? While you were gone, I learned so much. I bought so many books. I can read them all to you. Listening to her gentle, detailed plans for their future, a future where he was a helpless cripple. A bottomless despair filled him. What had he done in a past life to deserve this? Had he destroyed a galaxy? He didn't want to die, but he sure as hell didn't want to live as a limbless torso. What meaning would life have then? His only option was to stall. He had less than 30 minutes. How could he possibly survive? Had to try. Forcing a bitter smile, Leo looked at her. Helena, talk to me for a bit. Please. Are you scared, Leo? Helena looked at his pale face and offered a comforting smile. I told you, just drink this potion and go to sleep. It will all be over when you wake up. She gently stroked his cheek. It won't hurt at all. Don't be afraid. It'll be over soon. Leo gave her a deadpan look. Did she really think he was afraid of the pain? He was afraid of waking up as a human stump. This is a pretty big deal. I'm about to lose my arms and legs for the rest of my life. Of course I'm scared. Do you think I'm like you? That I can just grow them back if they get cut off? Helena looked genuinely confused. But isn't this better? If you can't move anymore, you won't be able to go chasing after other girls. And besides, no matter how handsome you are, no girl would want you like that. The more she thought about it, the happier and more excited she became. She looked like she could barely wait to begin. Wait, just wait a minute. Put the saw down. Leo stared at her, exasperated. He'd almost forgotten he was dealing with a psycho whose logic was completely alien. Why was he trying to reason with her? The thought was so absurd he almost laughed. He rolled his eyes. Just consider it pre-surgery jitters, okay? Talk to me for a while, then you can get back to your little operation. You could do whatever you want with my body then. The request seemed reasonable enough to her. She smiled, nodded, and placed the potion and the saw back on the table. You're very funny, Leo. I love talking with you. She pulled up a small stool and sat directly in front of him. What do you want to talk about? Oh, and what did you mean by pre-surgery jitters? Leo glanced at her. It's a concept from psychology. Don't worry about it. This backwards era of yours probably hasn't even invented it yet. Psychology? What's that? Helena's eyes widened with curiosity. Psychology. Since his plan was to stall, Leo launched into a full-blown lecture. It's the scientific study of the human mind and its functions, especially those affecting behavior in a given context. It involves cognition, emotion, thought, personality, behavioral habits. It's the grand study of the human soul. Oh, Helena stared at him, mesmerized by his long, articulate explanation. You know so much, Leo. Of course. Well, she asked, intrigued, since it's the study of the human soul, what can you see in my soul? Leo's gaze locked onto hers. He stared at her for a long moment until she began to shift uncomfortably. Well, did you see anything? She asked, a mix of nervousness and anticipation in her voice. I did, Leo nodded. Helena blinked, waiting, sensitive, insecure, suffering from bipolar disorder with alternating manic and depressive episodes, and exhibiting traits of borderline personality disorder. My diagnosis is that you require long-term psychiatric treatment. What? Helena asked, alarmed. Is it really that serious? Leo nodded solemnly. He was mostly bullshitting, but he knew her current state wasn't just a result of supernatural corruption. Every madman is mad in their own way. Helena's illness was largely a product of her upbringing, of her traumatic childhood. That was why, when he had appeared like a beam of light in her dark world, she had clung to him with such a sick, desperate possessiveness. Of course, what happened next was partly his fault too. Her insecurity, her feeling of being threatened by the better women who entered his life, had fed her anxiety until it finally snapped. But he hadn't known any of that back then. He was just trying to beat the game. If he hadn't died so many times, he never would have delved this deep into her psyche, playing the role of a crisis counselor. As he verbalized his thoughts, Helena froze. She began to mutter to herself. I'm sick. Am I really sick? Leo nodded silently. Yes, you have some very serious problems. But if I don't, he'll be taken from me. No, I have to do this. No, I'm sick. Leo says I'm sick. What I'm doing is wrong. She clutched her head, her body trembling, her expression shifting between agitation and anguish. Leo watched her, recognizing the signs of a person trapped in a spiral of self-doubt. Time ticked by. Less than 10 minutes left on the cooldown. He was running out of time. In the dim basement, Helena continued her frantic, whispered monologue, her face twisting into a tortured mask. No, no, no. She snapped her head up, her eyes, now shot with blood, fixing on Leo's calm expression. You're lying to me. You're lying to me again. You don't want to be with me. You're just saying all this to trick me. Well, that didn't last long. Leo knew it was a long shot. Helena shot to her feet, strode to the table, and snatched up the bone saw. Delays are dangerous. I can't wait any longer. I have to do it now. She advanced on him, the serrated edge of the saw gleaming in the lamplight. Helena, listen to me, I won't. I'm not listening to you anymore. I won't. Watching her approach, her body trembling on the verge of a complete breakdown, Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. He was out of options. He could only watch as she brought the potion to his lips. He clamped his mouth shut. Helena frantically tried to pry his jaw open to force the anesthetic down his throat. Drink it. Drink it now. Her rage mounted, her grip bruising his chin. Leo held firm. Finally, with a scream of frustration, Helena hurled the bowl to the ground, shattering it. Fine. If you won't drink it, don't blame me for what happens next. You'll regret this. She raised the saw, ready to begin while he was fully conscious. But just then, the flame of the kerosene lamp flickered violently. A strange, crackling sound echoed from a dark corner of the basement. What was that? Leo and Helena both looked toward the source of the noise. Their eyes found it at the same time. The sound was coming from Professor Evelyn's body. Leo's eyes widened in shock. The corpse was shaking violently. But the truly bizarre part came next. With a sickening crunch, the body sat bolt upright. Holy crap, she's reanimating? What's going on? The situation was so bizarre that even Helena forgot about the anesthetic, her attention now fixed warily on the corpse. In the dim, flickering lamplight, the body, with its chest cavity ripped open, a body that by all rights should have been completely dead, was now sitting up. To Leo's astonishment, Professor Evelyn's head swiveled stiffly on her neck, and her gaze slowly locked onto him. A grotesque smile spread across her pale, bloodless face. Hey. You two siblings are certainly interesting. In all my years, I've never had a home visit quite like this. Professor Evelyn. Leo felt a surge of hope. She wasn't dead. Her chest was torn open, her heart and other vital organs shredded by Helena's tentacles. How could she possibly still be alive? What kind of creature was she? While Leo was reeling, Helena scoffed. Pathetic tricks. Her arms exploded outward, 6 tentacles shooting toward Evelyn. But at the same instant, an icy wind swept through the room. All the kerosene lamps extinguished at once, plunging the basement into absolute darkness. In the pitch black, Leo could only hear the sounds of a furious struggle. He hadn't expected any of this. His plan had been to stall until his skill was ready and then try to soothe Helena again. He never would have imagined that the gentle, kind Professor Evelyn was capable of something like this. It seemed none of the game's romanceable characters were what they appear to be. While the two of them fought in the darkness, Leo threw all his strength into rocking his arms and legs, trying to break free. But the leather straps were too secure. He couldn't break them. Gritting his teeth, he began to awkwardly hop the heavy chair across the floor, inch by painful inch. Just then, a cold presence swept past him in the dark. Leo froze. Helena, but instead of an attack, the handle of a knife was pressed into his hand. Leo let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. It had to be Professor Evelyn. Even in the middle of a fight for her life, she was trying to save him. He quickly gripped the knife and began sawing at the strap on his right wrist. The battle raged on in the darkness. As his eyes slowly adjusted, he could make out silhouettes. He saw Helena's tentacles pierce Evelyn's body multiple times, but the professor only grunted in pain, her movements remaining sharp and swift. She grabbed another knife from the table and began hacking at Helena's appendages. The thick smell of blood filled the air, and Helena let out a furious roar. The professor was absurdly tough. The serrated blade scraped against the thick leather. It was too tough. Frustrated, Leo put all his weight into it. With a final violent jerk, the strap snapped. The blade dug deep into his forearm, and blood sprayed from the wound, but he ignored the pain. He freed his right hand and immediately went to work on his left. Leo. Helena had noticed his escape attempt. Her face a mask of rage, she lunged toward him. A tentacle shot toward the back of his head. But with half his body now free, Leo twisted around and slashed blindly with a knife. Helena shrieked in anger as a piece of her tentacle was severed. She charged at him with renewed fury. "Damn it! What is your sister?" A voice hissed in the dark. Evelyn moved like a cannonball, slamming her entire body into Helena. The two of them, a tangle of limbs and tentacles, crashed into the wall, shaking the entire basement. Evelyn was durable, but Helena was stronger. Unable to find a way to kill her, they were locked in a brutal, chaotic stalemate. "Shoggoth! She's a half-blood Shoggoth!" Leo, now completely free, yelled as he clutched his bleeding arm. "Her weakness is her human heart. Got it. What a pain in the ass." Evelyn grunted. But the moment Leo revealed her weakness, a massive wave of power erupted from Helena, sending Evelyn flying. 4 tentacles instantly pierced her wrists and ankles, while a 5th coiled tightly around her slender neck. Evelyn choked out a pain gasp. "You." With Evelyn neutralized, Helena's twisted, insane eyes locked onto Leo. "You betrayed me." Her last free tentacle shot toward his head like a spear. But Leo was already moving, scrambling out of the basement. He threw his shoulder against the heavy wooden door, slamming it shut just as the sharp tip of the tentacle punched through the wood, inches from his face. He'd been a hair's breadth from another reset. He wasn't afraid of dying, but he couldn't afford to waste a single loop. He fumbled with the heavy iron bolt and slid into place, locking the door. Then, without looking back, he sprinted up the stairs. Faster. Evelyn wouldn't last much longer. The power gap was too wide. Leo raced up to the 2nd floor, leaving a trail of blood behind him. He found the vase where he'd hidden the potion, reached inside, and pulled out the glass vial. Helena's corruption level was too high now. No amount of talking could bring it down to a containable level today. But this was better than nothing. For a superpowered being in the throes of a psychotic breakdown, corruption was directly proportional to their danger level. If he could lower it even a little, it might give him and Evelyn a fighting chance. A deafening crash echoed from the basement. Leo flinched, looking back down the stairs. A terrifyingly cold presence was spreading through the house like a plague, surging up toward the 2nd floor. He barely had time to react. A writhing, thrashing mass of tentacles vaulted over the 1st floor railing and landed on the 2nd floor landing. It had taken less than 10 seconds to get from the basement to him. Helena was truly pissed. He knew the only thing on her mind right now was killing him. "Leo. Leo, I found you. I finally found you." Her voice was no longer human. It was a high-pitched, grating shriek, and her form was more horrifying than ever before. It wasn't just her arms that had become tentacles. Her dress bulged and writhed, covering a swollen, pulsating mass of something wet and slick. Tentacles. It was all tentacles. like some deep-sea monstrosity, a writhing nest of black pythons, all tangled together, dragging her body forward. It was a sight that would shatter the sanity of any normal person. Even with his high resistance, the sight of that thing slithering toward him sent a wave of cold, slimy dread through him, making his entire body tremble. Leo, here I come. I'm coming for you. Helena affinity, 100 corruption, 95 danger level, 5 stars, extremely dangerous. Do not observe. Description: a twisted, shrieking, indescribable thing. A sharp pain, like a needle, stabbed into Leo's brain. You're under intense psychic assault. Performing sanity check. The psychic assault was so intense Leo couldn't move a muscle. He grit his teeth, forced to watch as the twisted mass of flesh and shadow slowly writhed toward him. Brother, why? Why did you betray me? Did Helena do something wrong? Her voice was still a high-pitched, alien shriek, a sound no human vocal cords should be able to produce. It's all useless. Everything I did was for nothing. I should just kill you, brother. Then we could be together forever. Yes, that's better. So much better. Countless black tentacles coiled around Leo's arms and legs, threatening to consume him whole. Sanity check. In the game, a sanity check was a roll of the dice, a test of stats and luck. In reality, it was a brutal war of attrition waged in the depths of Leo's mind. This time, he was about to break. A cord snapped in his brain. The psychic onslaught nearly knocked him unconscious, the light draining from his eyes. His arms fell limp at his sides. The vial of inhibitor slipped from his grasp and shattered on the floor, its contents splashing onto the tentacles writhing beneath Helena's dress. The potion was practically useless against an anomaly of her level, but it was enough. Helena's corruption level flickered, dropping by a single, crucial point. In that fleeting instant, a sliver of clarity returned to Leo's mind. Thank God for that potion, he thought, profoundly grateful for his foresight. He stared intently at the grotesque creature before him. Negotiate/soothe, master, 0:0:0:0. The skill's cooldown was over. Seizing the moment, he activated it, focusing its full effect on Helena. Instantly, a deluge of arcane, complex knowledge flooded his mind. His entire mental state sharpened, becoming unnaturally calm and composed. To be a master negotiator, one first had to establish psychological dominance. That rule, it seemed, applied even when facing a gibbering monster. The skill, unexpectedly, had become a potent weapon against psychic assault. A welcome surprise. From within the forest of tentacles, Helena's bloodshot eyes revealed a flicker of confusion. She couldn't understand why. Even in this situation, her brother showed no fear. In fact, he was smiling. It was a calm, detached smile that she found utterly infuriating. What are you smiling at, brother? Are you laughing at me? The tentacles tightened their grip, eliciting a sickening chorus of pops from Leo's joints. Dislocation was imminent, but his gaze remained steady, almost bored. I am laughing at you. Helena, what? Her eyes widened, her face contorting into a mask of rage. I just have to ask you something from the bottom of my heart, Leo said, his tone deceptively casual. By doing all this, aren't you just running away? Running away? The question stopped her cold. What are you talking about? It had to be the negotiate/soothe skill working its magic. She was actually listening. In her previous state, she would have torn him apart by now. He breathed a silent sigh of relief, but kept his expression placid, the faint smile never leaving his lips. You want to kill me? You think that's how you get me? What kind of twisted logic is that? It's pure escapism. You're so afraid they'll take me from you that you've already accepted defeat. You're a loser, Helena. The most pathetic, miserable kind of loser. A coward hiding under the covers with her eyes squeezed shut. Leo chuckled softly, a sound that drove Helena deeper into her fury. What? Her features warped into something truly demonic. A loser? No, I'm not a loser. I won. I got you. I got everything I ever wanted. They all lost. I'm the happiest person in the world. Huh, I doubt that. Leo's smile became one of pity, as if he were looking at a child throwing a tantrum. Tell me, what's your goal here? Is it really just to get me? To have your brother? Helena sneered. What else could it be? That's not a goal. That's just a means to an end. Incredibly, in the face of certain death, Leo started lecturing her on basic logic. Wait. Stop. All of Helena's tentacles began to tremble. You're confusing me. What are you trying to say? Leo let out a soft laugh. Looks like you were lying, Helena. You don't read much, do you? You haven't really thought any of this through. He sighed dramatically. As your brother, that's my fault, I suppose. I'll have to find some time to tutor you. Helena just stared at him, completely baffled. Seeing her emotional guard begin to crumble, Leo's smile deepened. It seems I have to spell it out for you. All your schemes, all your desperate plans. It was never about getting your brother. He locked his gaze on her, his eyes shining with insight. It was about finding happiness. Just like you said, Helena wants to be the happiest person in the world. He watched as conflict warred across her face. She was trapped, struggling with the truth of his words. Have you ever considered another possibility? Another ending to our story? What ending? Helena's mind was a chaotic storm. It was a bizarre feeling. She knew, on some level, that her brother was just stalling for time, playing some kind of trick, but she couldn't bring herself to deliver the final blow. An inexplicable impulse made her want to hear more, to understand what she was truly after. What was she truly craved? Leo's expression softened into his signature, gentle smile. That little girl, once upon a time, lost on the streets, always running, always hiding, never knowing where her next meal would come from, so thin and pale she wasn't pretty at all. Doesn't she deserve to have her favorite brother come home from school every day and cook a hot meal just for her? Maybe a creamy mushroom soup or pasta tossed in that rich seafood marinara from the Porta Brughi with a sprinkle of sweet onions. Or maybe that soft, freshly baked bread, the kind we had when we first met. Just thinking about it sounds delicious. If you kill me now, Leo said, blinking slowly, you'll never get to have that wonderful life. Her blood-red eyes remained fixed on him, but the pressure from the tentacles lessened, almost imperceptibly. He knew she was listening. Pressing his advantage, Leo went for the heart. Don't you want to walk down the sunny avenues of New Haven with me on vacation? Go shopping in the bustling downtown market, try on a pretty new dress and spin around in it? Or what about me winning you a prize, a giant, fluffy teddy bear, so big you can barely hold it? His voice was thick with sincerity. Ignoring his own revulsion, he pushed aside the tentacles and gently stroked her head, just like he used to. These are the things any normal girl your age gets to experience. It's nothing special, but because of your terrible childhood, you never got to have any of it. And I'm sorry, brother was so oblivious back then, I never thought to do those things for you. You have such a long life ahead of you. Wouldn't it be a shame to miss out on all that happiness? I'll help you get back all those wishes you never got to make. Isn't that better than us ending up as two cold corpses? If you die like this, what have you really won? Compared to those people you hate so much, you'll still have nothing. Leo looked at her with profound sadness. You'll have lost. You'll be all alone again. So, stop lying to yourself. Just stop. Leo's barrage of words struck deep, plunging Helena into a vortex of self-doubt. No, that's not right. Helena isn't a loser. I'm not running away. I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. The night deepened. In the old mansion's corridor, the mass of black tentacles quivered violently, her expression a mask of anguish and turmoil. Helena affinity, 100 stability, 75 description, a twisted being madly in love with you. Seeing that her stability had improved and that some of the extra tentacles had even retracted, Leo let out a silent sigh of relief. His death-defying gamble had paid off. Brother. Helena looked up, the tentacles slowly uncoiling from Leo's limbs. Everything you just said, was it true? Is there really another ending to the story? Can Helena be happy too? Leo looked at her. The murderous creature that had been hunting him moments ago now looked like a lost, pitiful child. A trace of clarity returned to her blue eyes, shimmering with unshed tears. Of course, Leo said with a sincere smile, predicated entirely on the fact that she wasn't currently killing him. I may have lied to you about a lot of things, brother, but I wasn't lying just now. Helena lowered her head again, eyes squeezed shut, as if contemplating something of immense importance. A rare silence fell over the old mansion, and in that moment, a flash of red in his peripheral vision caught Leo's attention. From the other end of the corridor, a scarlet shadow shot forward with impossible speed, radiating an undisguised, murderous intent. Wait! Leo yelled. Before the word fully left his mouth, a crimson claw slashed through the air, aimed directly at Helena's neck. A thick, bloody aura swirled around Professor Evelyn's impossibly long, sharp nails, like rising flames of gore. Her sneak attack was as fast as lightning. By the time Leo could react, Helena was already letting out a gurgling shriek of pain. The black tentacles wrapped defensively around her body as she stumbled back. Professor Evelyn. Leo stared in shock at her new appearance. Covered head to toe in blood, like a visceral horror movie monster, Professor Evelyn's very presence seemed to drain the life from the air. It was an ability he had never encountered before. Though she was drenched in blood, the massive wound in her chest had miraculously healed. Her eyes, once a deep emerald green, were now a flat, chilling gray-white, devoid of pupils. You have time for a heart-to-heart. The gray-white eyes flicked toward Leo. Do you want to live or not? Of course I do. Leo managed a bitter smile. But he had just managed to stabilize Helena's corruption. She was almost back to normal. If things had gone smoothly, the rest of this fight could have been avoided. His primary goal was still containment, but his professor's ambush had just torched that plan. Well, I guess you always know how to keep things interesting, Professor. The gray-white eyes showed a hint of confusion. What's that supposed to mean? You. Both of you. Helena was in a horrific state. She clutched at the gushing wound on her neck, the blood flooding her throat and turning her words into a grotesque, gurgling roar. Lies. It was all lies. Blood sprayed like a fountain, soaking her white dress. The tentacles that had just receded erupted from her body once more, greater in number than before. This is bad, Leo muttered, instinctively backing away from the burgeoning mass of tendrils. Countless black tentacles surged toward them in a frenzied wave. Professor Evelyn let out a cold laugh. A mist of blood gathered around her, coalescing into a sharp, crimson longsword in her hand. Gripping the blade, she charged fearlessly into the writhing mass. The battle reignited. Without a second thought, Leo turned and sprinted toward the alchemy lab. There was one piece of bad news and one piece of good news. The bad news: Helena, the half-anomaly, had now fully transformed into an indescribable entity, one of the most dangerous and volatile types of creatures in existence. The good news: the rest of the inhibitor potions, the ones designed specifically for her monster form, could finally be put to use. Hearing the thunderous crashes behind him, Leo burst into the alchemy lab and frantically scanned his inventory of materials. Stability inhibitor advanced, X3 potion crafting in progress. Watching the progress bar on his game-like interface, Leo's anxiety spiked. He could hear Professor Evelyn's curses from the hallway, mixed with Helena's inhuman shrieks. The sound of their battle were getting closer. The professor was losing ground. Faster, come on, faster. The seconds crawled by. After 3 agonizing minutes, a soft ding echoed in his mind. Crafting complete, done. A wave of relief washed over Leo as 3 glass vials, larger than the previous ones, materialized in his hands. Clutching the potions, he rushed back toward the door. The fight had arrived right outside. The mansion's second-floor hallway looked like it had been torn apart by a bulldozer, a trail of destruction leading right to the lab's entrance. This damn monster! How can it have so many tentacles? It's driving me insane. Professor Evelyn's eyes were filled with fury. Leo noticed her right arm was hanging limp at her side, clearly broken or dislocated, swinging uselessly in a way that had to be excruciatingly painful. Helena wasn't faring much better. Countless black tentacles had been severed, scattered across the floor. The professor's crimson blade was far sharper than it looked. You kid, why didn't you run? Professor Evelyn shot a glance at Leo as he opened the door. What are you doing just standing there? Your sister is after you. I know. Leo's eyes were fixed on the enraged Helena, whose gaze was locked entirely on him. Both of you die. You two-timing bastards. A volley of black tentacles shot toward them. Professor Evelyn moved to shove Leo out of the way, annoyed that he was in her path. But Leo dodged her, darting forward to stand between them. Are you crazy? You! Evelyn's scolding died in her throat. She watched, astonished, as Leo hurled one of the glass vials directly at the monster. With a sharp crack, the vial shattered, and a thick, chemical odor filled the air. The black tentacles instantly convulsed. Helena clutched at her face, her expression twisting in agony. Aerga, what is that stuff? Evelyn was stunned. This monster, which even she couldn't defeat, was having such a violent reaction to the contents of a simple glass bottle. This time, it was Leo's turn to give the orders. Well, what are you waiting for? Go, you little punk. She shot Leo a sideways glance. Guess you're not as useless as you look. With that, she tightened her grip on the blood-red blade with her left hand, leaped high into the air, and plunged it directly toward the vital core of the creature that was Helena. As Evelyn dove in with her crimson blade, Helena's body underwent another transformation. Her tentacles sprouted hard, black scales, turning her into a living fortress. One set of armored tendrils shielded her core, while others lashed out, making her resemble a colossal, nightmarish sea urchin, a perfect union of offense and defense. Despite her speed, Evelyn couldn't get through. No matter how she attacked, she couldn't reach Helena's weak point. Instead, she only managed to gain a few new wounds for her trouble. I hate these kind of things. Evelyn clutched her dislocated right arm, her frustration mounting. And it's so ugly. I really hate ugly things. As she muttered to herself, the monster gave her no time to breathe. A grotesquely long, sharp tentacle shot toward her head. Evelyn dissolved into a blood-red blur, dodging just in time. The corridor's wooden floorboards splintered like paper as the tentacle punched straight through, sending a cloud of wood dust into the air. She continued to weave between the deadly strikes, her crimson silhouette flickering in and out of existence. She knew the creature's weakness now, thanks to Leo, but it was useless if she couldn't get close. Her gray-white eyes tracked the tentacle's movements as she frantically searched for an opening. Then, for a split second, she glanced around the ruined hallway. Where's Leo? Dodging another strike, she scanned the area and spotted him, a stealthy shadow moving through the debris on the opposite side of the corridor. He was frantically gesturing to her. She immediately understood his plan. Leo crept carefully through the wreckage, closing the distance to Helena's blind spot. He calculated the range, needing to be close enough to land a precise throw, but far enough to avoid being skewered. After he gave the signal, Professor Evelyn seemed to get the message. The crimson shadow flickered again. This time, she wasn't dodging. She was charging head-on, straight into danger. She hacked and slashed at every tentacle in her path, carving a bloody swathe until a tendril impaled her shoulder. She let out a pained gasp, forced to a halt just a few yards from Helena's core. This was his chance. As tentacles from every direction converged on Professor Evelyn, Leo burst from the rubble. Like a grenadier on a battlefield, he hurled the second potion with all his might. It shattered against Helena's body. The potion took effect, and for a crucial second, her tentacles froze. Corruption level 85. Her corruption plummeted. Evelyn seized the opportunity. As Helena's defenses faltered, the blood-red blade shot forward like an arrow, piercing straight through her chest. A beam of scarlet light erupted from her back, lancing through the ceiling and into the night sky. You monster! Evelyn's eyes were ice-cold. As if for revenge, she savagely twisted the blade inside the wound. An ear-splitting shriek, enough to shatter a man's sanity, echoed through the mansion. The countless tentacles trembled and then coalesced into a single, massive whip. With immense force, it slammed into Professor Evelyn, sending her flying. She crashed through the door of a nearby room with a sound of splintering wood and shattering furniture, disappearing into a cloud of dust. Then, the monstrous, agonized face slowly turned toward Leo. He met those blood-red eyes, and his heart hammered in his chest. The professor's last attack had dealt a devastating blow. A horrifying, gaping wound now tore through Helena's torso, so deep he could see the faint pulse of shredded organs. With every slight movement, chunks of gore and viscera sloughed onto the floor. The stench of blood was suffocating. She stared at Leo, saying nothing as she began to writhe toward him. Perhaps the damage to her vocal organs had rendered her mute. Leo looked up. A canopy of tentacles slowly shifted, all aiming at him. She was gravely injured, her movements sluggish, but she was still a cornered, enraged beast. He had no intention of running. Instead, he raised a third and final potion. At the sight of the vial, Helena's tentacles paused for a fraction of a second. She was clearly afraid of it. His last two sneak attacks had cost her dearly. Finally, the containment conditions had been met. A confident smile spread across Leo's face. Facing the approaching monster and the forest of tentacles aimed at his heart, he appeared utterly calm. Evelyn, struggling to her feet and leaning against the doorframe, watched the scene with disbelief. Leo stood fearlessly before the monster, and was even taking slow, deliberate steps forward. The tentacles recoiled. The creature known as Helena was actually backing away. She knew how potent that potion was, but surely he only had one left? Did he have another ace up his sleeve? Of course, Leo had no more aces. He had used up every potion, every skill. He was bluffing. Helena had no way of knowing what the real conditions for containment were. That data was visible only to him on his private interface. So now, after being relentlessly beaten down, the word containment struck a chord in the sliver of rationality she had left, and she recoiled in fear. Leo advanced. Helena retreated. Her tentacles instinctively drew inward, trying to shield her from the final blow. Professor Evelyn watched, utterly fascinated. I've really seen it all today, she murmured. One sibling is an anomalous monster. The other is a mystic who brews potions. Not a single normal person in this family. When he had backed the ball of tentacles into a corner of the hallway, Leo glanced at the balcony not far from where Helena cowered. Then, he raised the vial high, feigning a throw. The mass of black tentacles shuddered. Without hesitation, she crashed through the balcony's glass doors and leaped from the second floor. She ran. Evelyn was floored. The monster that even she couldn't defeat had just been scared off by Leo. Leo rushed to the balcony, peering into the darkness below. In the faint yellow glow of a distant streetlight, he saw the twisted shadow scramble into the woods and vanish into the night. Clutching her arm, Evelyn joined him on the balcony. She stared into the dark woods with a hint of regret. Damn, she got away. A monster like that. If we'd brought it in alive to the Order of the Holy Edict, my spa membership for the whole year would have been paid for. Huh. Leo was taken aback by her priorities. Aren't you a professor at the academy? Are you short on cash? What do you know? Evelyn shot him a look. It's expensive moving in high society. My entire year's salary and bonuses wouldn't even last me a month. Right, and also, seeing Leo's bewildered expression, she realized she'd gotten off track. What did you do to scare it off just now? Did you have another trick up your sleeve? Leo shook his head, unwilling to share that particular secret. Maybe, he said, looking out into the darkness. She just had a guilty conscience. 2 a.m. The sky was a starless, inky black, the moon hidden behind a thick blanket of clouds. From the balcony, Leo stared into the oppressive darkness. The nights in New Haven were always like this, the industrial smog of the era having long ago smothered any interest in stargazing. Not that he was in a mood to look at stars. He was scanning the darkness for any sign of Helena. After 10 minutes, he finally let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. She was really gone, far from the old mansion. Of course, she could be lurking somewhere nearby, watching from the shadows, but he felt safe for the night. Her injuries were too severe. Even with her regenerative abilities, she wouldn't be recovering anytime soon. With that thought, Leo clutched his aching arm and slumped to the floor. The wound he'd sawed into his own flesh had stopped bleeding, but still looked gruesome. Here, Professor Evelyn handed him a roll of bandages. Leo looked up at her eyes, which had returned to their usual emerald green, and managed a grateful smile. Thanks. Evelyn shook her head, glanced around the ruined corridor, and sat down on the cold floor beside him. She sat on the floor because there was nothing else to sit on. The entire second level of the mansion looked like it had been demolished. Surveying the earthquake-like devastation of his home, Leo and Evelyn shared a look of weary, helpless amusement. I thought your family was supposed to be pretty wealthy. You should think about renovating, Evelyn said with a small smile. And don't even think about asking me to pay for it. This professor is broke. Leo shook his head. You saved my life, Professor. I wouldn't ask you for a dime. Besides, you got the wrong idea. My family isn't rich. Don't let the big house fool you. The game protagonist's parents were long dead, leaving behind nothing but this property. Leo's entire net worth consisted of the old mansion, now a de facto containment sanctuary, and his alchemy supplies. Oh, is that so? Fallen on hard times? Evelyn muttered to herself as she began tending to her own injuries. Leo watched her. She was covered in blood and looked terrifying, but her actual wounds were few. She was simply wrapping the bandage around her right arm, trying to immobilize the dislocated joint. And you said you don't know any magic, Leo pointed out. A normal person would have died a dozen times over from injuries like yours. Yet here she was, not only alive, but seemingly fine. The ability to regrow internal organs was absurdly overpowered. This professor doesn't lie, Evelyn said, glancing at him. If I say I don't know magic, I don't know magic. A bloodline talent, then? Leo asked, his curiosity piqued. If she wasn't a human with supernatural powers, she had to be something like Helena, an anomaly, a creature deemed a threat to society, hunted by the military, police, and the church. Evelyn paused, a sly smile playing on her lips. Secret. Oh. Her response was as good as a confirmation. So Leo decided not to press the issue. After the intense battle, they both sat in weary silence for a while. Evelyn looked at Leo, a smirk on her face. I have to say, in all my years, I have never been on a home visit this insane. You've really opened my eyes, Leo. Leo let out a long sigh, his gaze drifting back to the dark window. The dating sim, he remembered, had morphed into a full-blown horror game. Obsessive love had turned bloody and suffocating. His story with Helena was far from over. If he didn't find a permanent solution, a repeat of tonight was inevitable. He forced a weak smile. You're always talking about how many years you've been alive. Just how old are you, Professor? He teased. Evelyn's face instantly darkened. What does it matter how old I am? I'm not that much older than you. Leo blinked. Really? Of course. She leaned closer, poking him in the chest with her finger. 26. Remember that. Your professor is 26 this year. She enunciated 26 with deliberate force. All right, if you say so, Leo replied with a smile. Evelyn huffed. After finally securing the bandage on her arm, she stood up. Looks like your monster sister isn't coming back tonight. If that's all, I should get going. I have work tomorrow. You're still going to work after all this? Leo was stunned. What else am I going to do? Evelyn sighed in frustration. You students don't understand the struggles of the working class. This professor has to earn a living. Leo looked at her with a newfound respect. She cared so much about her students, she'd come on a home visit, act as a bodyguard, get her internal organs pulped, and still insist on going to work the next day. Talk about professional dedication. Well, I won't see you out then. Leo glanced toward the front door. The steam bus to the university doesn't run this late. It's out to be miles from the West End to Blackwood Academy. Walk safely. If you hurry, you might just make it before your first class. You're such a smart-ass. Evelyn laughed, ruffling his hair. Are you going to be okay here alone? What if your monster sister comes back? She looked at him with genuine concern. Why don't you come stay in my place? She offered, her tone becoming playfully suggestive. I've got amenities. Leo shook his head, politely declining her offer. For one, he was certain Helena wouldn't be back tonight. The mansion was now a place she feared. For another, he had things to do here. Things he couldn't let Professor Evelyn see. Oh well, if you don't trust your dear professor, suit yourself, she pouted, turning to leave. Professor, wait. What is it now? She asked, looking back. Leo glanced outside. The oppressive black had softened to a deep indigo. Dawn was coming. Spit it out, Evelyn said impatiently. Leo smiled. Professor Evelyn, I was hoping I could request a few more days off. He gestured to his blood-soaked clothes and wounded arm. You see, I'm pretty seriously injured, and I don't heal as fast as you do. 2 days. No, let's make it 3. So that's what this was about. Evelyn pressed her fingers to her temple. This student had just been reinstated, and he was already asking for more time off. Even with a good reason, it would be a pain to explain to the dean's office. But then she looked at Leo, covered in blood, staring at her with pleading eyes, and her resolve softened. Fine. Approved. Yes. Leo's face lit up with a brilliant smile. You're the best professor. Hey, Leo, you're finally back. As Leo, his arm wrapped in a fresh bandage, walked into the Magitech A-class lecture hall, he immediately became the center of attention. Chloe, his desk mate, eyed his right arm curiously. I thought you were still sick. Was it an injury? Are you okay? Leo smiled and shook his head. It's fine, just a scratch. Thanks to his potions, the wound was mostly healed after 3 days. A number of classmates, especially the girls, came over to wish him well. Leo responded with polite smiles, but his mind was on high alert. He couldn't help it. Helena hadn't shown herself for 3 days, and with her shape-shifting abilities, he suspected every person he saw could be her in disguise. He kept his overstuffed shoulder bag where he could see it within easy reach at all times. Though Helena was gone, he hadn't been idle. He had spent the last 3 days holed up in his alchemy lab, brewing a massive stockpile of potions, useful or not. The more the better. He had crammed them all into his bag. Even so, he didn't feel safe. The save point still hadn't updated, leaving a knot of anxiety permanently tightening in his stomach. As he was lost in thought, the noisy classroom suddenly went quiet. Shoo, a student whispered. Professor Evelyn's coming. Quiet down. Leo heard the rhythmic click of high heels in the hallway, growing steadily closer. He looked around in confusion at his classmates, who were now all pretending to be diligently studying, a hush falling over the room. Was Professor Evelyn really that scary? A moment later, she appeared in the doorway, a stack of books tucked under her arm. Leo saw that she was wearing the same outfit he'd seen in her office, a crisp blouse with a white cravat and a high-waisted black skirt. It was a simple, professional look that gave her an air of mature, feminine charm. But her classroom persona was vastly different from the Professor Evelyn he knew. She scanned the room, her expression stern and authoritative. When her eyes passed over Leo, they held no flicker of recognition, remaining cold and detached. It was like looking at a different person. Before we begin, a pop quiz on the previous lesson. She dropped the textbook onto the lectern with a heavy thud, her severe gaze landing on an unlucky student. Third row. Joel, explain the manufacturing process for a Magitech core structure. The rest of the class shot him looks of gleeful pity. That's... The student stammered, his face a mask of panic. You spend every class daydreaming. How many times have I gone over this? It's the most basic material. Why can't you remember it? Evelyn's voice grew sharper. You'll write out 20 times. The student behind him will answer next. A wave of panic rippled through the classroom. The row behind Joel looked like they just stepped in something foul. A shiver went down Leo's spine. It wasn't that he was afraid of her, but the scene triggered a primal, deeply buried academic fear. A teacher on the warpath was one of the most terrifying creatures on Earth. The pop quiz finally ended, leaving the class in a state of nervous tension. Leo opened his textbook. This was the first time he'd actually attended one of Professor Evelyn's lectures. She might be strict, but he had to admit, she was a captivating speaker. Even he, with his complete lack of foundational knowledge, found himself listening intently, a flicker of genuine interest sparked within him. The course was an introduction to magitech engineering, the very industry that powered the entire empire. Generations ago, Blackwood Academy's first chancellor, the great Royal Society scientist Rudolph Gould, had discovered how to harness the power of a miraculous mineral known as Etherium crystals. This unlocked a mysterious magical energy, which he used to create a new type of steam engine with near-zero energy loss and seemingly infinite power. His discovery ignited a new magitech industrial revolution, propelling the empire's technology, industry, military, and quality of life far beyond that of any other nation on the continent. His alma mater, the Royal Blackwood Academy of Magitech Sciences, had since become one of the top 3 universities in the country, which meant the original protagonist of the game was a certified genius, a top-tier student. Leo felt a pang of envy. He had none of that knowledge. It was only a matter of time before he failed an exam and got kicked out. He snuck a glance at Professor Evelyn, who was patrolling the aisles. Maybe, given their life-or-death bond, he could ask her to make sure he didn't flunk out. His head full of schemes for academic fraud, Leo didn't notice her approach. He was hunched over a problem set, completely stumped, when a soft hand gently covered his. Have you forgotten the previous lessons? You need to solve this part first, she guided impatiently. And then, like this, it clicked. Leo knew how to solve equations, of course, but the moment strange parameters like magitech were introduced, his brain went fuzzy. Under her hands-on guidance, he not only solved the problem, but also managed to complete several others on his own. Come to think of it, aside from the magic element, the era's technology wasn't that advanced. The problems weren't as difficult as he'd feared. Thanks, Professor. I get it now, Leo said with a grateful smile. He expected her to move on to another student, but she didn't let go. Instead, her grip tightened playfully around his hand as he held the pen. Professor. Leo looked up, confused. Evelyn was leaning over him. The collar of her blouse was slightly open, revealing the swell of her chest and a tantalizing shadow that nearly gave him a nosebleed. Realizing how rude he was being, Leo quickly shifted his gaze to her emerald eyes. He could have sworn he heard a faint, suppressed giggle. How's the wound healing? She asked, her expression still as stern as before, but her words were laced with concern. It's almost better, thanks for asking. Also, Leo lowered his voice to a whisper. Professor, you're a little too close. This isn't a good look. He glanced around nervously. Everyone else was focused on their work. No one was paying them any attention. He breathed a sigh of relief. He thought she would surely leave now. But in the next moment, he wondered if he'd been taking too many potions and was starting to hallucinate. A soft, warm breath tickled his ear. By the way, she whispered, her voice a low, seductive murmur. I'm not wearing any underwear. Leo's head snapped up in shock. Professor Evelyn's cold mask was gone, replaced by a sultry, mischievous wink. She straightened up and walked away from his desk. Leo stared at her back, his brain short-circuiting. Leo Sterling, she said, not turning around, her voice once again cool and professional. Come to my office after class. Beside him, Chloe saw his dumbfounded expression and giggled. Did you get the problem wrong? Looks like the professor's got her eye on you now. You're so busted. You're going to get punished by Professor Evelyn. Maybe. Leo nodded numbly. What awaited him might be punishment, or it might be punishment. His brain finally rebooted, and the full weight of what just happened crashed down on him. Had Professor Evelyn just sexually harassed him? Is she some kind of predator? So twisted.